Hi everyone, I'm Hi again everyone, technical problem. I'm Theophanis, I will be your next session host, and I hope that you have enjoyed your lunch, your breakfast, your brunch, call it whatever you like. Our next speaker will be Peter Vidos, and with a great presentation about animated data stories and Jupyter. I will bring him on stage. Hi, Peter.
Hey, everyone. Hi, Theophanis. Great to be here. Thank you.
How are you? Where are you calling us from?
Well, I'm everything's great. I'm calling in from Budapest, Hungary. And you?
Okay. I'm calling you from Tenerife, Spain.
Ah, nice.
So
I guess you have a bit better weather than we do.
Yeah,
Here.
I guess we have a big difference. I will bring up your slides.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I'm good to go, right?
Okay, I will leave you and you can start.
Okay, thank you very much. So, hey everyone, thanks very much for having me. I'm from a small startup called Vizu. Underscore Pyjamas, specifically this workshop or this talk. And you will have all the materials that I'm going to use during my talk. Feel free to clone it and play with the examples that are there. There are a couple of useful links down here. But basically, if you go to, and this is README file, but if you go to the notes folder, specific, then so the examples that I'm going to just show you. So about what we do, we created a new type of data visualization tool. New type in the sense that it uses a single logic to generate all different types of charts. And because of this,
yes. I think you have a small connection issue. Maybe you could disable the camera in order to have a better connectivity, because there are a little bit of
yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is it better now? I hope it is. I mean, Theo will let me know if not.
Yes, it's better. Thank you.
Okay, cool, perfect. So yeah, where was I? So we created this this charting engine that uses a single rule set to build all different types of charts. And because of this special characteristic of it, it can also animate between the charts that are expressed on its interface, as you can see in this animation that is now on screen. And technology-wise, we built the whole end. So the core engine is in C++. Let me make it a little bigger for you. So the core engine is in C++. We built stories and interactives with it back in 2020 and 2021. And then we released an open source JavaScript library on the core of it using WebAssembly in September 21. And we turned our attention to data scientists and the Jupyter ecosystem, that brought me here this March, when we released our first tool called IPyVisu, which I'm going to introduce you in a little bit more detail in a couple of minutes. It already enabled people to build animated charts and data stories in notebooks using Python. And then this July, when I was presenting at EuroPython, we released a new extension called IPyVisu Story, which already enables the users to build, present, and share animated interactive presentations within Jupyter and similar computational notebooks. Platform-wise, our tools are already available in many notebook platforms, but also in things like Streamlit and Mode, or you can use it within PyScript or Panel as well. So just very basically, I mean, before we go to the logic, since I only have such a short amount of time, I thought I would show you how this thing works when it's in its full-fledged functionality. So I created this, and I also thought it would help you get your attention, get you a little bit closer with your pajamas. So I thought I would talk about Donald Trump, or more specifically, his tweets. So Trump started tweeting, and this is just an example of a data story, obviously, built with our tool. So we started tweeting back in 2009 in May, and these are the monthly number of tweets in the first 2 years. It's like, the top is 36 per month, so roughly 1 per day. And then in the years later, he hooked on quite well. So it was like the top is, I think it's above 1100 in January 2015. And then he became serious nominee for the presidency. And then you can notice this downward trend in the number of his tweets. And and then he became president, and there's an interesting upward trend in the number of tweets again. So this is all his tweets, and we can also see the number of retweets, like how many times his tweets were retweeted. And as you can see, it shows a completely different picture. So this is just one example. There are actually, as you can see here in the bottom left corner, there are 11 more slides of this story. You can find it, as I said, in the repo folder that I shared with you. It works so here it's the example with the use of our tool within a Jupyter notebook, because just to make sure that you get it Jupyter notebook without just used inside it. Okay, so I was just, then let's get to how the whole thing is working, the inner logic, and see a couple of examples, simple ones and then more complex ones, right up to the story of Donald Trump or a similar one. So Wizy uses a very simple logic, a very simple basic logic, where we have one method called the animate method, via which you can describe a chart. You can add the data, the configuration of the chart, and the styling. And when you call the animate method once, you'll end up with a static chart. And when you call the animate method twice, then the original chart will just morph to the second state. And that's that. Obviously, it's very simple and elegant, but as you can imagine, the complexity starts when we try to make things work perfectly well. So just to give you a simple example, here we use pandas, by the way, and from the IPyVisu package, we will use chart, data, config, and style, which I'm sure you understand what relate to. And we just read a CSV file and add it to the data frame and add it to the data object used by IPyVisu. We should be seeing the data frame. Yeah, and it's the Titanic data frame, or the Titanic data, that I'm pretty sure all of you are familiar with. We just added a count column that has the value of 1 for each passenger. And the first chart we're going to build, first we just set the width and the height, and then we add the data that we call the data add data frame method here. So we added the data frame to the data object, and then we call the animate method while adding the data to the chart. And we set the configuration in a way that the count, so the number of passengers on the x-axis, their sex is on the y-axis, and we also add the count to the label channel and add a title to the chart. And what we end up with when we run this cell is a simple bar chart. So the count is on the x-axis, the elements are split by sex, and the label, so the number, the count here is also repeated on the label axis, so the labels on the markers. A little bit about the data here. So IPyVizu can only have two types of data: categorical and numerical. So categories and values. Obviously, count is a value here, and sex is a category, and that's about it. And because we added a category to the y-axis, IPyVizu will automatically know that it means that it needs to split the data by the sex category, and it also has this built-in sum capabilities. So here it automatically summed up the values in the count column based on the splitting of the markers, and counted that we have 314 female passengers and 577 male passengers. So the next in the next phase, when I call the animate method once again, I'm just going to add the survived category to the x-axis, so to the same axis where the count is on, and add it also to the color. And then if I run this cell, what we end up with is a stacked bar chart where the bars are splitted based on whether people died or survived after the crash. And in the third and final example phase, I'm just going to add the survived category, so whether somebody survived or died, to the y-axis, which would result in these elements grouping across the y-axis. It's fairly simple. I think the most important part to understand is the config part. Styling it has its logic, but it just changes how the charts look and feel. But how you set up the charts is the crucially important part of IPyVizu. Calling the animate method over and over again is like it's very simple, as I'm pretty sure you've realized. So just a quick intro to that. We have axes like X and Y, and we have channels, color, label, size, and lightness. Here we used color, so to add, to color the markers on the chart differently based on whether people survived or not. And we used the label channel here so that the number, the count is written on the markers. And as you could see here in this phase, we automatically move the label to the center of the markers because that's how you should do it with a stack chart. But put it on next to the markers when we have some space for it. So we really try to play nicely and follow the generic data visualization rules in order to help you make nice and looking charts out of box. So yeah, so we have these channels, and all the X's and the channels can have any number of categorical series. Right now there's the sex and the survived on the y-axis, and one numerical series on them. It's easy as that. Other parameters that you can add to the configuration is the coordinate system, whether it's a Cartesian or polar. It's Cartesian by default. Whether the geometry, which describes what kind of geometric elements we use. Right now it's a rectangle by default, but if I add here, let's say geometry circle, and rerun the cell, then yeah, as you can see, the markers change to a circle. Usually when we use a chart like this, it makes a lot of sense to add the same number that's on the y-axis to the size of the markers, which means that the size of these circles will represent a difference between the values that are also shown on the x-axis. So there are a couple of parameters like this. I strongly encourage you to go through all the examples that are in the repo folder, and we have some documentation. So I'm not going to go into more detail right now to be mindful of everybody's time here. So let's see a more complex example. It shows the results of a survey that we did in 5 LinkedIn groups where we asked people. These are groups where data scientists are present and data analysts, how often they have to present the results of their analysis to non-data scientists, presumably business stakeholders. And we have the number of votes per each option, per each group. And we built this little story, something to show the data from different angles. And again, we're using the pandas data frame, and we just read the CSV file, add it to the data object, which we then add to the chart. And we use one thing that we haven't seen before, which is the data component within the animate method. And we right away filter the data by just leaving the data that relates to one group out of the 5 that's in the data. The reason to do it is to just try and introduce the chart that we built here. And in the next phase, I'm just going to turn off the filtering, and then we can see all the data. It's actually a really nice way to introduce a data set to an audience, to just show one set of it and then to zoom out and show everything. Let me just really quickly run this chart so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is a stacked bar chart again, which shows that in this group, 56% voted on, said that they do the presentation twice or more per month, 12% once per month, 17% once or twice per quarter, and 15% never. And what I do here is I add, again, the vote percentage to the x-axis. Then I split it up by answer, which is also added to the color scale so that, the split in markers are having a different color. I add the vote percentage to the label axis, and I added the group to the y-axis, but I filtered it down so that it only includes one group. And then I have only, I added a title. I fiddle with the styling a little bit around here so that you have an understanding, like here, I set the padding, the right padding of the legend somehow, but there are plenty of other options. And when in the next phase, I switch the filtering off, only thing happens is that all the data for the remaining 4 groups appear. Obviously, it's really, really easy to follow what's going on here. And I think that's an important benefit of IPyVisu and IPyVisu Story, that when you are showing different views of the same data set, since they are connected with the use of animation, it's really easy for the audience to understand what's going on, and they don't have to make this kind of abstraction in their head anymore that they now do with static charts. So here's a nifty feature that I'm just going to switch on, which is called splitting. So I just set the split to true. And as you can see, the stack chart becomes like 4 separate charts where you could just compare the components really easily right next to each other. And yeah, it's I also going to change now. Here until now, we had the vote percentage on the label and on the x-axis, and now I'm going to change it to have and add the vote count. So how many votes we received from each group. Again, it's similar to what we did with Trump between the tweets and the tweet values. So when you're changing a continuous value, it looks really nicely, and again, it's really easy to follow along for the audience. And okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm rearranging the chart a little bit. Take a look at the code and you'll understand what's going on. Summing up, so I'm having now all the number of votes per each option independently from the groups. And then I'll just add yet another value, which is the percentage in total that all the options received. And I'm just going to switch the coordinate system to polar. And I'm not sure how many of you would guess what a stacked bar chart looks in the polar coordinates. It's either, by the way, it's either a donut chart, or a pie chart. Yeah, it's like that. Now, there were 2 issues. This was the original syntax that we used when we released our first tool. And so data scientists, we talked about it, said that this generic logic is really hard to comprehend. People not necessarily know that in order to make a pie chart, they have to make a stacked bar chart and then put it into polar coordinates. And the one directional use is a little bit puzzling. So if I go back and rerun, let's say, this cell, then I would end up with something very different than what I was expecting because of the polar coordinates staying switched on, and because Visu keeps remembering all the options from the previous states. So these were 2 challenges that we were faced with. And the way we addressed these issues is first we created presets. So yeah, I'm just moving forward through, by the way, some tabs of mine. So we added IPyVisu presets. We added these well-known chart types ranging from simple column chart to waterfall chart or bubble plot or a percentage area chart or stream graph, whatever. And you can find it in the documentation. And when you click on any of these thumbnails, you will end up with a code. And here is the important part, so that it's not only config anymore, but config.stream. Explain that this is going to be a stream graph. And now it has only a lot less options to add. So you have to just add what's in the X and the Y axis and what the numbers are stacked by, and then just add a title. And IPyVisu will automatically know that you are about to build a stream graph and set everything else according to this that you selected and by using it. So again, a simple example. This time the data set is about how much revenue different music formats generated in the US through, between 1973 and 2020. As you can see, we changed the year to use it as a string, because as I said, IPyVisu only differentiates between strings or like categories and values. And we wanted to understand that year is a category. And it's also important to note that we ordered or sorted the data frame from oldest to newest. That's something you should do when you're using IPyVisu, because since it's not aware of any temporal data, only categories, it won't know what to do with temporal data if it's not ordered from oldest to newest. So right, as now I'm using the bar chart configuration setting, and I'm just adding X and Y and a title. But I can also, next up, I'm going to use the group bar configuration and add the format to Y and also the group by, which means that every bar will have a different color. It's actually a lot nicer, especially when we build a story and we want the audience to be able to distinguish between what's shown on the chart and the different categories. And this is just, again, one example of using the styling. I'm just adding on the plot, the markers should use this color palette, and I'm adding a list of colors to it. And then from this point on, IPyVisu will use this color palette throughout the story, unless I change it once again and override it. So yeah, this is actually a step that's unnecessary at this point, because we already further developed the engine, but I actually just added the year to the x-axis to split the markers up. And so I'm just going to build a splitted column chart from this data, which looks somehow like this. So we can see the trends here. It's actually not very nice that we can see the labels. Yeah, it should be removed there. So I'm just going to rerun the chart, and it should have been disappearing. It doesn't, whatever. And here's another problem with it, that we have the simple events to remove those. And when I'm going to run the next slide, you'll see it. And so I'm just going to turn this. Looks like I ran into an error because of this. Let me really quickly fix this up. Yeah, let's restart and run all, and then we can see the chart as it's looking like. Just a second. But I'm pretty sure you understand what's going on here, at least I have a strong hope you do. Yeah, so here's the data, here's the original bar column chart, the group column chart, the splitted column chart. Then, as you can see, we have only every 5th year. We splitted the stream graph, we zoomed in, we zoomed back out, and we changed it to a line chart. So again, fairly easy. And here I'm using the line. Here I'm using the data filters, just switching it off, then filtering on certain categories and things like that you already saw. Okay, and the 4th version is what we released, because it's still a one-directional use case. It's called the IPyVisu story. It adds new elements such as a story, a slide, and a step. And because I'm going to run out of time, I'm going to really be very vague in describing what we're seeing here. But basically, we create slides So this is like slide number 1. It includes only one step, and it has a chart it's the same syntax as you've seen before. So it has data, it's filtered, it has a stacked area charts configuration, and that's it. And we add it to the story. That's it. We had another slide where the configuration is in a way changed, that we switch on the splitting feature, and then we add it to the story as well. We also use the tooltip feature that you already saw. If I hover my mouse over a marker, the data behind it shows up, and we play the story. So if I run this cell, we'll end up with a presentation that has 2 slides. I can even put it to full screen. It has a stacked area chart of the values out there. And in the next phase, I'm just going to split it up. And that's it. So it's really like you can go back and forth between the slides that you set for yourself. As you can see, I mean, I'm just adding again the event that removes every year that's not divisible by fifths, because it doesn't look really nice on the x-axis. And then I'm just going to add another slide number 3, which has actually 2 steps. So I'm creating the slide object, and I'm adding steps 1, 2. And I'm playing the story once again. And so what I'm going to end up with is a story of 3 slides. I only have every 5th year written on the screen, and we saw this part, and then we switch the splitting feature off and remove the filtering, and you can see how much money the US spent on defense. So again, I strongly encourage you to go to this workshop repo. As I said, you can get to it by bit.ly/ipvisu_pyjamas, or just if you go to visuhq/visuworkshops. And I also encourage you to, like, next week there'll be PyData Global, another great conference, and we are running a workshop, a 90-minute intro workshop, where obviously we can get into much more details, but also we run a sprint. So if you want to contribute to our project, which would be absolutely awesome, then we would love to welcome you. It's on the 1st and the 2nd of December next week. You can find all the details at the PyData Global website, but everything is here in the repo folder. So that's all I wanted to share with you for now, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have some.
That was a great presentation, Peter. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Theo. Thanks.
I think it's a little bit unfair because I have seen, I think, your presentation in Dublin, and I will take advantage of my privilege as a session host. And I wanted to ask you about if you can give us a brief update, because I have seen also the presentation for Streamlit, and maybe you can describe us with a few words about what is being done in the background, like the services you are using for IPvisu.
Sorry, I just didn't get the reference to Streamlit, what that was about.
Because I have seen to the presentation that
That
maybe it's
already,
my misunderstanding. Okay.
Oh, that is
like
so that
brief update,
so that IPvisu is already working within Streamlit. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah.
Is that okay? So, oh yeah, let me quickly bring it up, because it does. So yeah, in the background, well, we are working heavily on making the onboarding experience as great as possible, and also to integrate our tool into other tools that data scientists are using, because it seems that the data scientist community is really like what we do, and we want to have more people using our stuff and help us understand what we built. We are also researching heavily like the grammar of animation, because this is quite new in the sense that animated form of charts, it's not common. People don't really know how to use it, and we are working on that too, and also we are obviously doing a lot of things performance wise and building examples for people to this.
Sorry, I would just say if we can stop sharing, because you are hanging, you have a connection problem.
So far, it's again the results of a LinkedIn survey. yeah, it should have been better to show it, but if you look for IPyVision and Streamlit or search for it, there are a couple of examples already that feel free to check out. We are actually working together with the Streamlit team to make the experience for the users even better.
Yes, and what I have seen is like the tool is very simple to use, and you're using. I don't know. For me, because I'm not related to this, I don't have this occupation. I'm software engineer. It was very easy to understand what is being happened and everything. I have just removed the presentation. Maybe you would have a better connection now.
I have to admit here what you just said, because it was breaking up a little bit, but parts of it I understood. And,
I just said that
yeah,
it was easy for me to understand, even I don't have the topic of data scientist or data engineering or data analyst. It was very easy for me to understand it.
Glad to hear, Theo. Thank you very much. And yeah, it's really like I don't know if you had the chance to paste the link to this repo folder to the YouTube chat, or I can do it, I guess, maybe.
I have tried 3 times, but now we have done it with the official Pyjama account.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, thanks again for having me, and all the best for all the other speakers and the attendees. It was great being here.
Thank you very much, Peter, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of the conference.
I will stay tuned for sure.
Yeah, I will just now remove you from the stream. Sorry for that.
Okay, no hard feelings. Bye, guys.
Bye. And I will introduce our next speaker, who is Liza Ucho, and will make us a very nice talk about Supersearch with OpenSearch and Python. Hi, Liza.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great. So, hello, everyone.
How are you? Where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from Munich.
Okay.
In Germany. And you?
I'm calling from Tenerife, Spain.
Great.
I think, like Peter, you have very cold weather there, or maybe I don't know.
Yes, it's really cold inside my home.
I hope you have at least a good hot coffee or tea. I don't know.
Yes, I have some heater.
Okay.
So
I
will try to share my screen. Moment. I think you'll be able to see it.
Yeah.
So I will be switching between the screen and the command line. So I will just leave it. But you can see the command line as well, right?
Yeah. Everything is fine.
Okay, great.
Okay, I will leave the floor to you, and have a nice presentation.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I hope you had a great conference so far. My name is Liza Shoa, and I'll be giving a talk about Supersearch with OpenSearch and Python. A little bit about me. I worked for a long time with Python, and now I work as a developer advocate for Ivan. At Ivan, we manage open source databases for you. I'm also a contributor in the Python community. I really like Python, and I happen to live in the city of Munich. So I have been organized PyLadies Munich chapter for about 3 years. And yeah, let's see what we have in the agenda for today. So I will go over about what is OpenSearch for the people who don't know what is OpenSearch. And I will explain to you, or I will try to convince you why should you use OpenSearch in your applications. And I will go over how can you write search queries. I will do this in a sort of a demo and also explain to you in the code. So first of all, what is OpenSearch? OpenSearch is a direct fork of Elasticsearch version 7.10. OpenSearch is right now, I believe, in the version 2.3.0. If you are familiar with Elasticsearch, from that version that would be similar. But of course, now there are different projects and they are developing differently. What is OpenSearch? Hasn't this name it has? OpenSearch is open source, which means that you can download the code, you can change it, and you can use it as you want. Another thing that OpenSearch has in the name and is OpenSearch is a search engine. Search is very good for example, if you want to put this as an application to serve as a search engine, OpenSearch would be a good choice for that. OpenSearch comes with something like analytics suite, which is kind of a fancy word to tell you that, yeah, you can draw graphics and you can draw some visual information using the OpenSearch dashboards, which would be similar to Kibana, for you. And you don't need any kind of programming for that. It's really in this program. OpenSearch is also very good for log analytics. So a lot of companies, they use OpenSearch, not actually as a search engine, but they to send logs. For example, you could send a lot of logs to OpenSearch, and you would see it in the OpenSearch dashboards, how it goes, and it handles very well large amount of data. OpenSearch has support for REST API, so if you work as a backend and you are already familiar with REST API, you could use this to connect with your OpenSearch cluster and send requests for it. And OpenSearch has language support, which you can use OpenSearch with different clients, such as Python, Go, Node.js, and others. So if you don't want to use the Python client, maybe you are familiar with other clients, you can use also to connect with your OpenSearch cluster. Why should you use OpenSearch in your application? When I think about OpenSearch, I think about superpowers. And when I think about superpowers, I think about superheroes. And so I'll try to kind of explain to you how OpenSearch works for a hero. So if OpenSearch would be a hero, OpenSearch would be able to speak several languages. Actually, OpenSearch has support for more than 30 human languages, which means that if you are sending your data in, I don't know, your mother tongue, which is not English, or if you are sending your data, OpenSearch would optimize those data saving for the language that you are using. If OpenSearch would be a hero, OpenSearch would be able to read your mind. OpenSearch has support for auto-completion, and maybe you have seen this in other search engines. You are typing, and out of the standard, the search engine is completing for you. Kind of think, what would you type, right? So that is something that you can do with OpenSearch. Another thing that if you think like OpenSearch can speak so many languages, can OpenSearch understand my broken English? The answer is yes. You can use something called fuzzy searching, which is able to still bring you relevant results even when you mistype something. So this is actually really cool. And last, I would say that OpenSearch has support for dynamic mapping, which is if you are coming from different databases, more relational databases, you would have to specify the mapping before you send your data. With OpenSearch, you can send your data and OpenSearch will try to find the mapping out of it, like dynamically. Of course, you can also specify your data upfront, but it does have support for dynamic mapping. So this is also something that I would say quite nice from OpenSearch. This would I'll say is like a short summary of OpenSearch superpowers. But let's see how can we write search queries with OpenSearch. So here I have a demo you can get from this QR code. We're gonna be using Python. We're gonna be using OpenSearch cluster, which is already running, and we're gonna be using lots of data for recipes from food. So I hope you all had lunch by now. or I hope you don't get so hungry. So yes, if you don't get this QR code now, I will also share in the end of the slides, so it's okay. So let's see how it is. First, I will show you how it is how the data looks like. So the data I will be sending to OpenSearch, they are composed of JSON documents, and the information that there is in this data are things like this. We're going to be looking more specifically in the title, but yeah, the whole document would also have calories, protein, rating, sodium, and other information. So I will show you here. So I have it here already, the OpenSearch Python IDE open, and I already download. I will make this a bit bigger so you can see better. Let's see. Yes, so I think it's good. So I have it here, and if I'm using Reach to print things here, but the file looks a bit like this. And we have it here, how you can get started, what kind of version I'm using, and how you can try out with your OpenSearch cluster, and what does it has. So we're gonna be working with the search queries that you can find it here, like match, match, and others. So first search query that I have it here is the match one. So how can you write the match query, or how does it work, the match? So I have it here, as I show you, I have a CLI that we're going to be using to interact with our cluster, of OpenSearch cluster. I already send all the documents to them, but I have it also here, functions that will help you to send the documents. So I have about 20,000 recipes that I send to my OpenSearch cluster. And now what we're going to do, we're going to interact and try to query things out of it. So I have this function here, search.py, and the function, we're going to be looking in the match pair. So if you do --help, you will see it here. What do you need to pass to the CLI? And in this case, we need to pass which field are we querying and what kind of words we are querying this field. And yes, so let's try to find something. So I thought I have here recipes, and I tried to look for recipes one recipe that is very exotic to find. And one that comes up in my mind is chocolate and garlic. I don't know if you would be curious to try, but I think it was the most exotic thing. Can I find something that has chocolate and garlic on it? So let's see. So I'll be using the match query, and we're going to be writing chocolate, garlic here. Oops, I need to also add the title, which is the field that I'm going to be querying from, and it's going to be looking. As you can see here in this list, we have chocolate garlic mojo with toasted Cuban bread, has the first one here, and then we have a bunch of recipes with garlic, not with chocolate. So the way that the match query works by default is using the operator or. So what's actually is looking is like, is there in the title chocolate or garlic? So that's why you see recipes with only garlic here, and still they show up. If we want to actually look for recipes with only that contains these both words, we use an operator. And in this case, we're going to specify the and here. What it's going to be looking now is that, is there chocolate and the word garlic in the field title? And you can see here that shows up this recipe, which I think it could be interesting to try. But let's see now how it's in the code. How does it work in the code? So we have here OpenSearch client that is written in Python that we are interacting with our OpenSearch cluster. And we have here the function .search. When we interact in the search queries, we have to specify in which index we are being looking. If you think about the index, it's like when you take a book and you don't want to look for page by page. Normally, there is an index where you can find the documents, right? Like the sections that you can look for the words. It's the same with OpenSearch. So here I have the index called recipes. And we're going to specify the body here, which is a Python dictionary. In the body, we have the query, which type of query we're going to be using. In this case, is the match one. And we have the field. In this case, is title. We're going to specify what words we are looking in the query and which operator we're going to be using. If you don't specify the operator, the OR operator is taken by default. So we found out that we found this recipe called chocolate garlic mojo with toasted Cuban bread. If you like it, you can ask me. I can send you the recipes or the data. So this data you can also find in the repository. And it looks a bit like this. I think it looks tasty. Don't you think? I would give it a try. So next query I'm going to be using is the one that I will start with an example. So imagine if you are looking for things in a database, and if you are looking for my name, I actually have a composed name. So in case you look for Liza Myra, in case you swap these words, you may end up with a different person. So sometimes the order of the word does matter. And for that, you would write with the word matters, you would write something called the match phrase query. And let's see an example how the match phrase query works. So I have it here, python search.py, match phrase. I believe it's like this. Let's see if I wrote correct. Yes, I wrote correct, so the dash dash help. And we're going to specify the field and the query. Oops, let me search.py, match phrase, and then we have title. And we're going to specify, let's search for something. So if I search for the word coconut cake, we search for the word coconut cake and we can find that here several recipes. But let's suppose that for some reason I didn't write coconut cake, but I write cake coconut, which is not correct in English, but let's suppose that our user is writing this. And you see it here, if I swap the words, I no longer can find any results. Because I'm using the match phrase, and by default, the slope parameter, which I've explained to you, is 0. But the slope parameter would be a parameter that it's the flexibility, it's the flexibility between, is the distance that the words can have. In this case, it's 0, so it means that whatever you type in that order needs to be looked. But let's suppose now we wrote has a 0 and we could not find anything. If we wrote the slope parameter has 1, then you can see it now that we can find cake with coconut in different titles here. Okay, if we put actually the slope has a 2, what would we find? So in this case, we actually can find coconut cake. So I think now we can have some idea that actually what the slope parameter is accounting by the number of moves that you can have between the words to match with your word. But I'm a very visual person, so I prepared this thing for you so you can understand in a visual way. We have it here, what we got it was cake with coconut, but what we query was cake coconut, for example. What happened is when we allow the slope parameter to be 1, what OpenSearch will do, we'll try to match the swap of those words until it has a swap in one distance. So I have it here. If coconut from the position 2 go to position 3, you will see that it matches with cake with coconut now, even if you don't have the with there, but just the order. If we go further, as we try to query the cake coconut, and we put a slope of 2, what happened is that you could swap the word coconut to the first position, would be 1 slope, and cake to the second position would be 2 slopes. And with this, you would end up matching to coconut cake. So I hope this was a piece of cake to understand, maybe even a coconut cake. And let's go to our next query. Our next query is fuzziness. And to demonstrate how fuzziness works, I try to think about something that even for native speakers may be not easy, but definitely it's not easy for me because English is not my mother tongue. So the word desert and dessert. One is sweet and the other one is dry, I would say. But yeah, let's try to find if we can find recipes with this word in our recipes set. So I'll be looking for Python search.py fuzziness. I'll look for fuzziness. If in case I don't know by heart, I can always look here. Is actually fuzz. So I'll just copy it here and I'll continue Python search.py. And then I'll put fuzz here. I'll be looking in title and I'll be looking for the word desert. As you can see, the fuzziness, when we are looking the fuzziness square, it's by default doesn't using any fuzziness level. And yeah, you can see it here that is 0. And we could not find anything, of course, because we don't have this word there. But in the case that I look for help here, and you see that I can specify the fuzziness level. So I'll add the fuzziness level here. I'll just copy it here. And I'll add the fuzziness level of 1. But still we cannot find anything because I believe it's the word here. But let me see. If we put a fuzziness level of 2, now we can actually find something. So how does that the fuzziness work? I'll explain it to you. So fuzziness level, or the fuzziness, is done by the Levenshtein distance taken into account the number of character chains that your query, so what you are looking for, can match with whatever is there. For example, here, SOP would be W2A, desert would be also 1 character, city also 1 character, and act here is an example how it also works for transposing. So it works for change one of character, add one of character, remove one of character, and also transpose characters that are close to each other. Okay, I can move it here. And you would end up with something like client search.py. That's how it would look in the code, match, and the title and the query desert of fuzziness level of 1. And yes, this would be the result. But one thing that you can do about this, like if you don't know how your data set is, how long are the words there, what you can do is to specify the fuzziness level to be automatically, because the OpenSearch would say, okay, maybe here are always long words and we need a bit of more fuzziness level. Because in case you you have short words there and you put the fuzziness levels very high, what will happen is that you may end up with a different word that you are not looking for. So let's try to actually use the same one, but now we're going to put something automatically there. So we have search.py, fuzz, and we're going to specify, we have the fuzz query, and we are looking in the title, and we're going to specify the fuzziness. Let's see if I get the word fuzz is correct. But yes, something is wrong here. Let's see, what could it be? Yeah, what we are looking for. So we are looking for desert. Let's see if this would work. If we look for fuzziness and add auto. So now it works. So this would be like my recommendation if you are using your fuzziness, to put it automatically because it's easier for you and it will probably bring you relevant results and you don't need to worry about, okay, maybe that will contain long words, but maybe it has short words. So OpenSearch will take care of this for you. I think it's quite cool. And now you know the difference between desert and dessert. Desert with 2 S are the sweet ones, and the other one is the dry one. So it would one of the recipes we found was mango and mellow dessert would look a bit like this, I think it's tasty. We are close to Christmas, so I was thinking maybe we can try to search for something like Christmas-ish. So let's see if we can find something. I will use the match one, and let's use the match one. And we're gonna look in the title for Christmas. Hope this word is correct. Yes, so you can see it here. We find recipes like Christmas Continental and eggnog. Actually, interesting things here. You find it has Christmas recipes that maybe you do it. Yes, this is how the search. Some of the search queries work. OpenSearch comes with something called dashboards, which I will show you is something like this. Let me show you here. Did I have it open? Yeah, I have it here. So here's the OpenSearch dashboards. You can do things like this. For example, here I did a cloud representation with all the words that are in title, and I can see which one shows up more often, like pastry dough, chicken, and turkey recipes would be the ones that shows very often. Let me remove it here, and this would be something. Yes, so I will continue presenting. But yeah, this is how you use OpenSearch dashboards. If you want to see how you can connect with your cluster and do different things using this CLI, you can go here to GitHub repository, and I'll be happy to assist you with anything that you need there. And yes, one thing I want to show you as the last thing is how can you see OpenSearch has a search engine being used in a project. Maybe you want to use in your application. And we have it here, the documentation from my company, which actually we are using OpenSearch in the back end to has a search engine. So if I look here for OpenSearch, you can see that it's bringing some results here, according with the relevance. And you can find this project, maybe it inspires you to adopting your own documentation or your own projects in the dev portal. You can see how it's like e-practice, how you can use OpenSearch in a real open source code, so to say. So I hope you like the presentation, and that's it what we have for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot, Liza. Really interesting talk. And I will, okay. It was very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I have only one question, like, because me too, obviously, I'm not a native English speaker. How is the support on different languages, like, for example, Greek or, I don't know, Spanish? Is
Yes,
it
the
related or not?
support, it's when you are sending your data to OpenSearch, you have to specify the language. But of
Okay.
course, it's nothing in software development. It's as easy as it looks. So it's not just like put your language there. But depending on the language, you have to put vocabularies or ways that the word should be split. For example, in the German language, we have a lot of composed words. So if you're looking for orange juice, orange juice is one word in German. So you think that, for example, if someone is looking for juice, they still should be able to find orange juice, even if they are in one word. So how does OpenSearch actually looks on that? You would have to split the words. You have to tell OpenSearch, okay, this word is a composed word. You have to split the word and to be able to still get relevant results. So this is very interesting. It is not as simple as it looks. So definitely, so far I have used more the English one, which is by default, everything you use, it will be in English optimized. But it is nice to know that it can handle different languages.
Yes, sure. So thank you very much.
Thank you for
a,
having me.
a great background, I have to say,
Yeah,
behind
thank
you.
you.
Yeah. And
It's very, I'm preparing for the winter, so
it's very wintry, so I would say, with the polar bear.
yeah, so it's very cold also here. So only polar bears can survive in this room.
Okay.
So thank you, and I wish you all a great rest of conference.
You too. I hope you will enjoy.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. So So our next talk, maybe we could wait for 3 or 4 minutes in order to start our next talk. So we are back. Our next talk is a recorded one. Is from Paolo Melchiore, and it is about Django and PostgreSQL. I will present it right now. I have to say that I want to inform you that Paolo will not couldn't attend this event, but he will be very happy if you have any questions after the presentation. If you could reach him in Mastodon or Twitter, he will answer your questions there. So let me share my file.
Hello everyone, I'm very happy to be here with you, even if remotely. In this talk, we'll see how to use some great feature of Postgres as a database in Django. In the database section of the Django documentation, we can read that Django attempts to support as many features as possible on all backends. However, not all database backends are alike. Django per se is a database agnostic web framework, but unfortunately real-world projects based on it are not. Postgres has the richest feature set of any Django-supported database, and we'll see in this talk how to use some of these superpowers. Before moving on, it's important that I make this clear. Okay, it seems clear to me, Now we can move on. Seriously, I would like to underline that I'm not a database administrator. So, who am I? I'm Paolo Melchiorre and I'm the CTO of 20Tab, a Pythonic software company for which I work remotely. I'm a software engineer and a long-time Python backend developer. After using Django for a few years, I became a contributor to the project. I also use Postgres as a database for all my Django projects. And I would say it's time to create one. As usual, to create a Django project, I use the latest Python 3 stable, create and activate a virtual env, in which then install the latest stable Django. In this case, Django 3.2.4, released yesterday. Then, using the Django start project command, I create the basic files of our project. And now, let's see what it takes to add Postgres to this newly created project. I think many of you are familiar with this drawing from the Little Prince. This drawing is used as the header of the Twitter account of PsychoPG, a Postgres driver for Python. I think it represents its goal very well. Python with Postgres inside. PsychoPG is the most used and advanced Postgres driver for Python. It implements the Python DB API 2.0 specification and it's distributed under the LGPL license. The library was released 20 years ago and over the time has been constantly improved and kept aligned with Postgres. Version 3 is currently being developed. PsychoPG is a wrapper for libpq, the Postgres C client library. To install this package on a Debian-based system, you can use the apt package manager. For other operating systems, you can read specific instructions in the documentation. For most operating systems, the quickest way to install PsychoPG is using the package available in the Python package index. And now, let's see how to use PsychoPG in Django. To use Postgres as a database in your Django project, we modify the setting, adding the PsychoPG-based database backend and the connection parameters of our Postgres database, which we may have locally or remotely. If you embrace the 12-factor methodology, you can define a database URL variable in your environment. Depending on whatever you use, Django database URL or Django configuration, your database section should look something like this. Let's now see our database in action. We'll use the example model defined in the Making Queries section of the Django documentation. For our test queries, we only use an outer model and an entry model, both containing various types of fields we can search on. We can perform basic queries like these in our models, but actually, we can run these queries using all other supported databases as well. What we are really interested in is using Postgres specific feature from Django. For this same reason, in 2014, Mark Tamlin, a Django core developer, started a crowdfunding campaign to develop a module to contain fields for a number of Postgres-specific data types. The campaign was successfully, and the new module was merged in Django 1.8. The module now contains Postgres-specific fields, indexes, function, extension, and so on. Over the years, important functions have been added such JSON fields, full text search, random UUID, and operator classes. JSON fields have become usable also in the other supported database, but only from Django 3.1, released last year, 5 years after being introduced in the Postgres module. To use all the functions of the Postgres module, just add it to the installed apps list in the setting file of our project. And now let's get to know some of the features of this module better. Okay, I took this photo during the Spring Day after the Django Con Europe 2017 in Florence. And that day I completed a pull request to add a database function in the Postgres module for Django 2.0. I was helped that day by Mark Tamley, the original creator of the Postgres module, and by Marcus Alterman, a Django core developer, both in this photo. The database function I'm talking about is random UUID. The random UUID database function returns a version 4 UUID. It's contained in the pgcrypto module that provides cryptographic functions for Postgres. It can be activated using the crypto extension migration operation. But from Postgres 13, this function is included in core. To see the function in action, we had a UUID field in our entry model. This field uses Python UUID class, and only when used on Postgres, this stored in a UUID data type. The database will not generate the UUID for you, so it's recommended to use default. But note that the UUID for callable is passed to default, not an instance of it. Using the random UUID function, you can update all UUID value in a model way faster than cycling over all the entries and generating a new value with the Python function. I recently used this technique to set in few seconds UUID in a nearly 1 million row table. Okay, I took this other photo during the sprint day after the EuroPython 2017 in Rimini. I promoted a working group on Django and some developers joined me. That day we started the transition of the Django project website search function from Elasticsearch to a Postgres full-text search solution. Since then, I've written an article and give more than one presentation on full-text search with Django, so I skipped the implementation details, but at the end of this talk you will find references to retrieve them. The full-text search support in the Postgres module has specific fields, expression and function. If your Postgres version is recent enough, you can also use specific indexes, phrase searches and web search style. Without any customization, we are able to perform a full-text search on a single field of the entry model. For example, we can search for a word in the plural form and have results in the singular form. This is a very convenient way to start using Postgres full-text search out of the box. To speed up the full-text search, we can add a search vector for the entry model and use it to create a functional gene index in the same model. The functional indexes are an addition of Django 3.2, available for all Django database backend, but G-index is only available in the Postgres backend. After that, we can search for a word using a syntax similar to the one used by search engines and have more accurate results. We can use these syntaxes using the search query with the search type attribute. Furthermore, the SQL queries will be faster thanks to the gene index. With this photo, we move virtually in the Northern Europe, more precisely in Norway. I took this photo because I really like the effect of these typical houses in the water, all similar to each other but repeated, like data in an array. The array field makes Postgres array types available in Django. They are very convenient for storing arrays of similar data without creating a new model for them. You can specify other Django model fields as a basis. Its size can be defined, or it can even be multi-dimensional. For example, we can store multiple emails in our author model by defining an emails array of email fields. We can then query our author looking for an email defined as a list. The content of the field itself is represented as an email list, and the resulting SQL code uses all Postgres-specific operator, like in this example. Unfortunately, the default array field widget in the Django admin is a simple input text with a comma-separated values. But using these Python packages, you can represent in the Django admin the values of the previously specified email fields as a multiple dynamically addable text input. I took this other photo in San Francisco. We are now virtually moving in California because the packages we are going to talk about is provided by the California Civic Data Coalition, an open source network of journalists and computer programmers for news organizations across America. Django Postgres Copy is a Python package to quickly import and export delimited data with Django support for Postgres copy command. The copy command moves data between tables and standard file system files. Copy to copies the content of tables or the results of a select query to a file. Copy from copies data from a file to a table appending the data to whatever it is in the table already. To more flexibility, Django Postgres Copy uses a temporary table that are automatically dropped at the end of the session. To benchmark Postgres Copy, we'll use a CSV file containing all the geographic names from the OpenStreetMap project. We create a new model that maps each columns contained in the CSV file into a field. We have to replace the model default manager with the one from Postgres Copy. Here we use the CSV file with all the geographical names of Italy. The file is more than 200 megabytes. To upload the CSV file, we use the appropriate query set method in which we indicate the path to the file. The loading speed is impressive, almost 1 million records in just over 3 seconds. Under the hood, Django Postgres Copy executes several SQL statements, creates a temporary table based on the content of this CSV file, upload the content of the CSV file to the temporary table in just over 2 seconds. It inserts the data of the temporary table into the table managed by the featured Django model, eventually applying transformation, and finally deletes the temporary table. To reduce disk space and transmission bandwidth, we have compressed our CSV file in gzip format, reducing the size to a fifth. We can pass our compressed file directly to Postgres Copy without having to decompress it. Loading is even done in a slightly shorter time than measured with the compressed CSV file. I want to repeat it, almost 1 million records in just over 3 seconds. We are now virtually moving in Italy with this photo that I took in a wood in Abruzzo, the region where I live. I'm showing you this photo because now we are going to talk about trees. Django L3 is a tree extension to support hierarchical tree-like data in Django models, using the native Postgres extension L3. It's a simpler and faster alternative to implement materialized paths compared to more used Django packages. The package has a path field and an abstract tree model. To add tree-like hierarchy to the entry model, we add a path field inheriting from the tree model provided by Django L3. We also add a dedicated Postgres gist index on the same field to speed up queries. This is a tree representation of the example hierarchical structure that we have stored in the path field of our model. I took this example from the Postgres L3 documentation. We perform a hierarchical query to filter all the contained models of a particular path, sort the result by the tree structure, and then take all the subpaths. The resulting SQL statement uses the L3 operator to filter the table and the gist index to speed up the operation and the sorting. With this photo, we are now virtually moving on the path of my last hike on the Italian Apennines. I already used this photo in my recent talk about maps with Django, which you can read on my blog, but I want to briefly talk about the geographical extension of Postgres used by GeoDjango. PostGIS is a Postgres extension and it's also the best database backend for GeoDjango. It internally integrates spatial data and has spatial data types, indexes, and functions. In this chart, I synthesized the compatibility table of the geographic backends supported by GeoDjango. In the GeoDjango documentation, there are 3 compatibility tables for spatial lookups, database function, and aggregate function. As you can see, PostGIS is the only geographical backend that supports 100% of the feature. If you are interested in using this feature, you can see my previous talk. There are also many other Postgres-specific features that can be used directly in Django. For example, you can use a lot of indexes and aggregation function only available in Postgres. You can also use the trigram extension to perform fast searching for similar string. There are also specific fields only available in Postgres, like range fields and case-insensitive text fields, and more. Before saying goodbye, I want to share with you some tips based on my experience as a Postgres user with Django. Reading the documentation in the Django website is full of information about the Postgres module. Read details about this feature in the Postgres website. It's helped you to understand how things work under the hood. Read the source code of both projects in GitHub because there is something you can learn only from the code. Search also for questions on Stack Overflow, but try to answer questions by yourself instead of reading answers. Last but not least, you can also study this talk because it is released with a Creative Commons license. The PsychoPG3 library is under active development and you can use this contact to learn more about it, get involved and also sponsor its development. The company I work for, 20Tab, is one of the sponsors of this library. In 20Tab we have developed many Django projects using Postgres. You can find more about our open source project and our Platonic works using these contacts. To find out more about my personal work with Django and Postgres, use all my contacts. Using this QR code, you can download this presentation on my website. Thanks again for having me. Enjoy the next talk in the conference. Ciao a tutti.
So it was a very interesting talk from Paolo, and thank him for that. We'll be back in 10 minutes with our next talk. I will just put again the nice music.
Okay, I'm gonna put you on. Hey,
Can you change the pictures like the emojis? How you do it?
like you
Yeah,
mean like
yeah.
this? Okay, so that was fun, I think.
Yeah. If you have Martin in the background and supporting you with all the stuff, is okay. And every organizer, because if I was
I
alone, it
think
would be like hell.
yeah, I think you did a really good job on this. And are you on later today, or was this your only shift for today? I think this was the only shift, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But I will
Well,
enjoy the rest of the
but
conference.
you've done this perfectly. So the next time we do it, we really need you back so that you can help.
Yeah, I guess when I have you or Joe or Christian in my back, I'm always confident to do things.
Yeah, well, and things do break here all the time, which
Yeah, of
is
course.
totally fine. Um, we also just saw like Paolo. If you've been reading the chat, then you've seen that Paolo was following this on his phone. So he's really sorry that he can't be here with all of us today. But we did manage to post a link to his talks, so you can get the slides and look at all the other things he's done as well. And we have another minute or two. And in roughly 4 minutes, the program will continue. And while we're waiting for that, I can also tell you about the big problem we had this morning where the first talk did not work out. But we have that settled. So we have now a recording of the talk we all missed. And we are scheduling this for later this evening. So you will have a good chance to, as you can see now at the bottom, see it tonight at 21 UTC. And I know that some people have been waiting for async talks, so especially with databases, that is something that will be useful for some of you.
Yeah,
And also
count
coming
me
up
involved.
in a few minutes, it's going to be a talk that is not in English, but will help you understand that as well. So,
I guess this is where I leave you, and thank you for for this quick chat and all the help.
yes, and okay, and thank you so much for your help, and I'll hope to see you soon at one of the in-person conferences.
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Bye.
bye. So are you gonna? Yeah, and there we lost them. So we are almost, no, actually we are very good on schedule. So what I can remind you with one of the other banners is this one, that we do have a Discord. And if you're not on there yet, you have a chance to get there. You have a chance to take part in our tiny competition where you can win a Python book from Jason, who's going to be the host of the next block. So that's good. And if you're unsure about our code of conduct, there is a direct link to that scrolling at the bottom of your screen as well. The other good thing we want to do, like at least once each block, is to thank everybody who has donated some money with the free tickets, because all the donations we got from that actually paid for the whole conference cost. So that's nice. And actually every excess money we get from this at the end will be donated. So if you watch the end of today's streams, then Choke will tell you what's going to happen with the extra money that we are going to give away. Okay, so with just 1 minute to go, I can already see at the bottom of my screen our next speaker getting ready. So if you give me the thumbs up, I can put you on stage and say hello. And I see a thumbs up, so oops, that's not the one. Somebody just left. Hello!
Hello.
Oh, it's great to have you with us this year.
Thank you, Martin.
And
Really
hey,
happy to be here.
yeah, and it's going to be fun because you're going to tell something like a real world experience. And if you have real world experience, this is always interesting for other people who run into the same problems maybe at their job, or think about like, could I even do this? So I'm really excited about you telling about the things that you learned in team building. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put as soon as you have your slides on your computer, I could put the slides up, and there we go. And I hope you have a great presentation. If there's any questions, we'll ask them afterwards. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Martin. Thank you for the very nice introduction. And I can also see my slides are working. Great. So let's start with sharing my experience about how to start a new team or in a new team. A few words about myself. I'm playing the role of the Associate Director of Engineering at Soundwide in Berlin. Originally, I came from Ukraine around 6.5 years ago, directly to Berlin. And in my free time, I really like spending time with the community. And I'm also one of the organizers of Pi Berlin meetup here in Berlin, and also sometimes online. And I have around 11 years of software development experience, also leading the teams, different companies, quite a different experience. And 7 years from those 11 are in Python. I'm really happy to be a Pythonista. And this is my preferred language still. I really like the community, and everyone who is watching this talk right now, I really recommend you to join any of the communities you have in the neighborhood. It's a really fantastic way to learn from others, to share everything. And even when you're sharing, it's also part of the learning through the questions, through the feedback. But today's talk is not about me. It's about how to start a new team or at a new team, and which strategy to choose, how to set up your team for success. So let's really start the talk. And I want to start, as usual, with the question, are you starting a new job or a new team? You can write in the chat, I will read afterwards. So those are different things, and I will touch base all of them, like different options, different suggestions for starting a new job as a team lead or engineering manager or head of engineering, when you need to support the team, or when you need to start a new team and then you need to build from scratch, or you're starting a new role within the same team. So those are different approaches, also different strategies. And just keep in mind that the suggestions today are just the suggestions based on my experience. It doesn't mean that it will work for you specifically. It's all supposed to be drafted and crafted for your teams and your specific role within the company, also different company values. So those are the ideas to try and see how it works for your team. But there is no really book which can help you to show just a step-by-step guide, because it's all has to be adapted. So if you're looking for some inspiration what to even search in internet, I searched before the talk how to start the first 90 days. Why is it so important? So the suggestions were, why is it so important? What should I do in the first 90 days? What is the plan? What is included? And I can suggest you to start with this book. So this is my copy of the book with the sticker notes. I put some notes in there. I use it pretty often, even outside of the 90 days. And usually I heard from different people, not only about the 90 days, but also about the first 30 days, the first 60 days. And the opinions were quite different from different people, also different levels of the knowledge. Different experiences with different companies. And it was supposed to be when you start, not as a developer, but as a manager, then you would rather listen, collect the information, and not to be very active in the first 30, 60 days. It was never my case. So I was always very operational in almost the day one. I was always asked, what do we do? What do we do here? And then I saw the need of the immediate improvement. Okay, this is something very small. I can change and it will just improve drastically the way how we work. I don't know. It was some sort of the gut feeling that I developed within joining different teams, in different countries. So I started my career in Ukraine, and then I moved to Germany, to Berlin. It's a different experience, not only because of the countries, but also different companies, because they are all international, all different people from all around the world. Like you work remotely or with people on site, but still it's a very different experience from company to company, from even team to team within one company could be just a huge difference. So whatever you read from the book, you can follow the book by adapting also all your guidelines and ideas. You can use different questionnaires in there during your first 90 days, different checklists. I think the most important from the book and in general are the fundamental principles. So just the basics that you need to sort of follow in the first days, whether it's 30 days for you, 60 days or 90 days, you still need to really start somewhere. And for me, it's very important to have the preparation step. I usually start the preparation step before joining the company and even before signing the contract. So whenever you already know that you're going to maybe in the future work for one of the teams, I would already start there. So then it would help you to prepare yourself for maybe a job that you will love or the job that is not what you're looking for. And then at that step, you will already see that, okay, this is not going to work for me. And this is not something I want to join and then keep doing for quite a few years. So the second step for me is usually when it doesn't mean that I should stop preparing myself. I do that all the time, or I stop learning at some point. It's just mostly when you prepared yourself, then you already start, and then you learn and take notes as much as possible. And then you can keep learning and keep taking the notes. But at the same time, you need to go to the next principles and the next step. And then the next would be adapt the strategy. Because maybe before even starting the job, before even joining the company, you have already set of tools. You have already set of different strategies that you take, whether this situation, that, and then you take already a specific tool for it. And it's very important to understand that those tools will not work in the different teams and situations. Maybe some of the parts of them will work, maybe even the entire set of tools will work, but it's not necessarily like that. So you always need to keep in mind that you need to adapt your strategy based on what you learn and what you keep learning. And then when you created already some strategy, when you have an idea what to do, I would suggest you to stop acting to secure early wins. So those are small changes you can already do, and then they would be improving the way how the team works, the way how customers are getting the value, or the way how the product is being released. Like many things that can be improved with a very small change. It's just when you join, you are a new person, whether it's a new role, it's still a view from the outside. It's very beneficial because the people who are working within one team or one product, they already got used to many things. And it doesn't mean that those are perfect. It's just becoming a habit when you do many things. And then when you're from the outside, like with a different point of view, you can see the things that you can change. And this is very beneficial. And that's why the first 90 days are so important. Those are the days when you really see those things. And it's very good when you can prioritize the things and then start acting on some small improvements even early. And of course, you need to build your own team. It doesn't mean that you need to build always from scratch. It could be that you're supposed to start and then create your team, and then you already know you can have the strategy on how to build the team. Or if you have the team, you need to maybe rebuild the team or even improve the things. So this is what I meant by the building your team. And of course, you need to accelerate everyone within the team, outside of the team. You need to be really there supporting and improving everyone's collaboration and work. So those are fundamental principles. If you're looking for how to start and what to do in the first 90 days or even 30 days, this is the list. So I suggest you to just save this list and then maybe adapt based on what is the situation. So let's take a closer look into every step very fast. So the first one, preparing for the new job or the new position. That's the one which starts before or during the interview process. So when I know that this might be the company that I'm interested in, I have a set of questions to ask, to take notes, and I ask those questions from different people, not necessarily just all engineers, but I really like the cross-functional sort of interview to ask product people, developers, different engineers, also my manager, of course. That's very important to hear different opinions on the same questions. Then you can have more of an overview of what they think are the processes, the pain points, basically expectations from you. And then even at this step, you can start thinking on what is the strategy, like future strategy, how can you help there? Whether your experience is matching to what the company is looking for. Because when you are interviewing somebody, you are looking for specific people for a specific job. You already have a set of questions, and based on the answers of the people who are being interviewed, you already know whether it's a match or not. So it's the other way around. When you are being interviewed by somebody, you need to really listen to the questions, because those are basically the challenges that you have to solve in the job that you're going to take, if you're going to take that, of course. And I would suggest you, when you sign the contract and when you know when the start date is, to offer to meet with your future manager to talk about expectations and the future goals. So that would also accelerate your strategy creation. So maybe you will have sort of a draft. What do you need to do already before starting the job? It's not a lot of work. It's just step by step. When you do the interview, you already create that strategy. And then the next step is about expectations. When you are joining a new team or within a new role or a new company, then it's very important to align on everyone's expectations and also be clear what are the goals of basically you in the new role. It's very important to align with your manager, because expectations and the tasks are different if you ask different people. So it really has to be clear for everyone. And I really like that quote. That's from the book, The First 90 Days, that recruiting is like a romance and employment is like a marriage. So you really need to make sure that everyone understands you in there, and that would have the happily ever afterwards. So to accelerate your learning, and also for the expectation settings, I really suggest you to go through the list for this book, The First 90 Days, and ask about the past of the team, of the company, the present and the future, to learn more about the background of the environment that you're going to work with and that you're working with. And please make sure that you take all the notes, because you will really need those notes to draft a strategy. So once you learned more, I usually do that within the first few weeks. I try to set up as many talks, one-on-ones with as many people as possible. So all the key people working around the product that you are going to work with or already working with, and everyone who is taking the decisions important to the product that you're working with, they should be on this list of one-on-ones for sure. So you would learn all the backgrounds of different people, how they work, how you work, how to work together, how the team works. And then you can see and collect all different views on the same thing, basically, the way how we work together. Then basically there is a very good framework which is called the STARS: Startup, Turnaround, Accelerated Growth, Realignment, and Sustaining Success. So those are 5 different sets of challenges and the opportunities for different use cases. It doesn't mean that the company is a startup. It means that this is the way how it works, basically. Those are the goals and sets of priorities for the company. So based on those different challenges, the strategy would be different, and you can also map them and adapt your strategy based on this. This framework you can see on the link below. It's created by the Michael D. Watkins. It's also mentioned in the same book, The First 90 Days, very good book. And to be honest, I learned about the challenges not from the book, but from different work scenarios from different companies. It was quite an interesting experience, and I think I would really like to have this book earlier, maybe to read before I even joined any of the companies. It would be very beneficial because some of the people, they use the framework in a different way, and I would really like to see what are the opportunities if there are the challenges like this, not like learning the hard way before even learning from others. And the first thing that I would do in the new work environment, in the new job or the new company, the new team, I would ask if there is a roadmap. If there is none, then I would start creating one. Together with the team, of course, it's not a one-person job, it's like the entire team job. There are different ways of creating the roadmap. One could be in Jira, like the very Jira view-like. It's not that collaborative, so it's one person behind the screen, clicking on the roadmap, moving it around. I prefer more teamwork during any kind of road mapping, planning, and then I usually move it back to Jira to have this representation shared with everyone. So I used my reports for any of the team activities, including the planning as well. And this roadmap, which is on the screen, looks very convenient because it has different departments. So the green, red, and the blue, those represent different departments, like the product design, product development, marketing, or like any other sub-team that works on the same product. And then the numbers 1, 2, 3, those could be the quarters, those could be the months, or even sprints. Personally, I use the calendar months. It shows like the real picture and the time, and then the team can really update it and keep it up to date. It's a lot of work, but if you do it every day, if you update it even not every day, but at least once a week, it's not so much of a deal. And then you have a big picture roadmap, and then you can adapt based on the needs. So about securing early wins. I have a few suggestions for you, and those are just a list of suggestions that I used, a list of things that I learned. So the first one is about decision making. When I usually started a new job, I was always asked to take a decision, even from the day one. Even before starting the job, somebody asked me, so what do you want, this or that? And I was not sure. I mean, before starting the job, I would not definitely take any decisions, for sure. But when you're starting a new job and you are the person who has to take decisions and the team cannot take decisions, they don't want to have this responsibility, then I would take a decision. And also not taking a decision is a decision. So if I don't know enough about the company or the situation, then I would ask everyone else to provide me more information. What are the pros for saying a yes? or a no, and what are the consequences if we don't take this decision, we delay the decision, or we say a no to something. And then based on this, asking different questions, different people, I would really create this decision, and then I would just take it. We can take wrong decisions and right decisions. And of course, if like in a year from now, or even a half a year from now, I would look back into the decisions I took, it doesn't mean that they all were right, but that at that moment, at that point in time, when I took that decision, it looked the best decision in that situation I had. So I'm happy with the decisions. I'm happy to also fail together with the team, learn from it, improve it, and then take next decisions in the better way. It's always the same for everything, also software development. You fail fast, you learn from it, and then you improve. So here is the same thing again. Then you need to introduce small improvements in the beginning. If you want to really change something very big, you need to just change all of it all at once. If it's a huge change, then it's better to have one huge change instead of a bit smaller change, 1/3 of a change, but then 3 times in a row. That would be too much. So either you improve very small baby steps, and then in like a year or 2, you have this final, or you improve all at once. You like change it once, very big change, and then you keep improving in a very small baby steps. So those are 2 options that I learned. Then the next one, you need to put the improvements in the priority list. Like what would be the first one? What would be the second one? What is the next step? And then I would suggest you to just take one step at a time, so you can really see what is the difference, what did you do, what worked, what didn't. And if you're building a new team, or even rebuilding the current team, I would suggest you to take a look at the core domain charts. You can see the My Report template connected. There is also an explanation, and you can also read about this core domain charts from the domain-driven design, from Nicktoon. Also, they run really nice workshops about this. It's about mapping out your domains or the team setup, and then seeing how do you see that in 1 year? What kind of collaboration and work types are between the teams? How many people do you want to have? Do you see having in each team? What is the complexity? What is the business differentiation of each team or each domain? Basically, it's very useful to see that on the company scale, but also very useful to have the team built based on the domains that you have. And of course, you need to accelerate everyone who is working on the product, around the product together. And the things to focus on during this acceleration, the things that would accelerate everyone, is to clearly define roles and responsibilities. It doesn't mean that those are the company roles, like, you know, that the role that you have or the title that you have. Those are the roles and responsibilities within the team. Then you need to provide all the needed support. So whenever there is a need for something, then I would suggest you to just jump on it and then solve all the blockers and support the team. And then using the structured processes really helps to improve the teamwork and collaboration, and also improves the quality of the product. And this is my experience. I'm really hoping that you learned something today. If you want to learn more, I really suggest you to read the book, The First 90 Days. Also, if you are more into building the teams, there is a great book which is called Team Topologies. This is about different teams, different types of the setup, how the teams are working with each other on the larger scale of the organization. And it's also very helpful to think on which teams do you need to build, how to build the team, and how can they collaborate. And just keep in mind, you don't have to be a tech lead, a team lead, engineering manager, or head of engineering to create some improvements and then improve something within the team. You can always suggest to the team, let's try this out. If it doesn't work, then we just don't take it. It's the same for everyone else. So whenever you are a new person within the team, you can see the things to improve. You can also go to your manager and say, this is what I learned. This is how I see it. These are the things to improve. And that would be very beneficial for the team, because as a new person, no matter which role you're playing within the team, you always have this new, fresh look from the fresh start from the day one. So thank you. I would like to hear back from you, and thank you for the inviting.
Thanks very much. That was very interesting. And like the first thing I liked about the idea is, read a book about this. This is actually a very good advice, because people who might go into a team leading role might think, oh, I'll find out myself somehow, like I'm going to do this. So as you've studied the book a while, have you found something that you thought, I would want to do that like differently? Or is there anything that you think, oh, the book didn't prepare me for that?
Well, I really like the checklist and the questions to ask. And it's also useful not only for the 90 days, but also afterwards. Also to have this perspective from the manager, what is actually expected from me. That is something that I would definitely do first. And it's something that I tried to do before, but it's not always working. So I not always could get the clear answer. So this is what I expect from you. So I just kept on trying, there is a book, Yeah.
So when you tried this, did your team members then make like demands on leadership from you that you were not really prepared for at the beginning, or what? How did you handle that? Like the team coming to you and saying, "Oh, I want you to decide this. I want like I'm just a team member. I'm not touching this." So because you take the responsibility for the whole team.
Yeah, actually, I really like the collective responsibility. I mean, as a manager, of course, that's on me, and I would protect the team from everything the outside, and I would take the responsibility on me. But I really like when the team is committing to something. So it's like the team feels more, I would say, that they own the entire thing, instead of just me saying, okay, we're doing that, or like not doing that. So I really like getting all the opinions aboard, listening from everyone. What do you think is important right now? What do you think you would do? And then taking the decision based on that. Like altogether, sometimes, yes, it's just on me. I have to take the decision when the team doesn't want to. But yeah, it could be tricky, but...
We also have a question from Lisa in the chat, like which kind of qualities are important for leaders to have?
Oh, many, actually, very many of them. The soft skills, I would say, are important not only for the leaders, but for everyone. So for the leaders, I think active listening, also being honest with everyone, also setting the expectations. So many things that you need to really make clear, and setting clear goals and defining the responsibilities is very important from the very start, or on any level, actually.
Okay. So we just have a few more thank yous there in the chat. So I'm going to add to that, and thank you for that you took the time to explain all this. And if any of us gets into a situation to become suddenly a team leader, then the thing we have to remember is, what was that book again? So thanks. Yes, the first 90 days. And we should actually look up the author's name and put that in the chat.
Yeah,
so
I will share my presentation.
Yes, because that would be something that would be interesting to read. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you for having me.
Bye. Okay, so that was fun. And I really learned something today, because I would never have thought of choosing a book to get ideas on how to lead teams. So that's very good that you get insights from people who have actually done this. So let's continue in the schedule. So when we suggested calls for papers for presentations, CFPs, for this year, we explicitly said that they did not have to be in English. And I'm really glad that some people actually took us up to this. And so I'm super happy to say, oops, where we go? No, that one. Nuestro próximo orador es Cristian. Su charla en español es sobre Python en tu idioma, código, documentación y comunidad. Let's see if we can present this. And don't worry, you will be able to understand this, hopefully. And that's the good thing. If you're really prepared and then you're not, because you have too many files on your machine, and I will have to actually do a quick peek in one of the other folders to make sure that this will be the right file. And here it is.
Hello everyone. First of all, I am really happy to be able to participate in this beautiful conference. It's a really different format of a conference that I have discovered in the last years. Now I'm finally able to speak here, and with a special opportunity as well. So as you might have seen in the program, this talk will be in Spanish. But don't worry, the slides are in English, and also you will have English subtitles during the whole presentation. Without further ado then, let's start. Hola. Bueno, esta charla, como ya vieron en el programa, estará en español. Así que espero de que tengamos muchas personas de que puedan extender este lenguaje y que puedan seguir la charla. Como ya lo dije anteriormente, gracias a los subtítulos podremos también tener la participación de personas de que hablan inglés, y también las slides estarán en inglés. Mi nombre es Cristian, me pueden encontrar en las redes como Semaureir en todas esas plataformas y algunas otras. Actualmente trabajo como Senior R&D Manager en The Qt Company. Me gusta mucho participar de muchas iniciativas Python, sobre todo las que están enfocadas en las comunidades hispanohablantes, tanto de Chile, de España, de México, y sobre todo una iniciativa que se llama Python en español, que intenta agrupar a todos los países de habla hispana en un mismo lugar. Pero bueno, esta charla no es sobre mí, sino que es sobre Python y cómo podemos llevar Python a nuestros lenguajes, principalmente con tres factores, ya lo que son el tema de código, documentación y comunidad. Bueno, antes de que se preocupen en tomar notas o recordar algún enlace, está toda la información acá. Si se van a esta URL tendrán la última versión de las slides, así que no se preocupen por tomar alguna nota y las pueden revisar quizás al mismo tiempo de que estemos haciendo la presentación. Primero que todo, creo que muchas personas que participan en esta conferencia tienen ya un poco de experiencia en lo que es aprender un nuevo lenguaje, ¿cierto? Entonces, para aprender un nuevo lenguaje hay muchas cosas que nosotros siempre tenemos que estar considerando. Lo primero es que vamos a estar aprendiendo un montón de palabras nuevas y sonidos nuevos en algunos momentos. También a leer y escribir en este lenguaje que es totalmente distinto. Hay mucha gente que sabe leer algún lenguaje o otra que solo sabe escribirlo. Sin lugar a dudas, lo principal es la práctica y el tiempo que tenemos que llevar a cabo. Y muchas otras cosas más. Entonces, imaginemos una situación en la cual tenemos que aprender un lenguaje para aprender otro lenguaje. Suena bastante complejo, ¿no? Es un caso extremo, lo sé, Pero de todas formas es la realidad de muchas personas que actualmente no hablan inglés como su lengua materna o no hablan, o quizás lo aprendieron como segunda y todavía están aprendiendo. Un ejemplo pequeñito es que miremos este código. Es un código muy sencillo de Python, no hace muchas cosas. Para todas las personas que ahora sepan Python, es muy fácil entender esto. Pero si nos ponemos desde el punto de vista de alguien que no sabe programación y no sabe inglés, pero habla español, lo primero que voy a pensar yo, es decir, import, se parece a esta palabra que suena como importante. Hay algo que dice math, hay algo de todas las operaciones matemáticas, funciona solamente para un par de cosas. Esa palabra while no la conozco, cómo se escribe, dónde va la H en toda esa palabra. ¿Qué es POW o PO o POW? No sé. También es algo que sea un poco de conflicto. Entonces ustedes pueden decir, bueno, está exagerando, cualquier cosa. Entonces si yo les muestro este código y ustedes no saben nada de Python, intenten poder ponerse en el lugar de alguien que es totalmente nuevo a esto. Como hay muchas palabras de que no son conocidas para ustedes, es quizás un poco difícil de que puedan ver y ver como, no sé realmente lo que está pasando. ¿Qué significa mientras, por ejemplo? Entonces, toda la gente que habla español ve ese último ejemplo y va a decir, ah, fácil. Pero por otro lado, la gente que no habla español, si ve ese trozo de código sin saber Python, no es algo tan fácil. Entonces, yo sé que esto es algo súper importante porque es la realidad para muchas personas de que no hablamos inglés. Actualmente yo entiendo cómo funciona el mundo, es algo necesario porque había que elegir un idioma para que todas las personas quizás nos pudiéramos comunicar. Es difícil saber cada uno de los lenguajes de los lugares donde vamos. Entonces, se entiende. Hay que aprender inglés, es bueno. Pero ¿cómo podemos ayudar a la gente que está en esa situación? A esa gente que no lo sabe o quizás está aprendiendo o tiene un conocimiento muy limitado. Esto ustedes quizás me pueden pensar de que es una situación exagerada, yo lo sé, pero existe en la realidad en muchos países, sobre todo de donde yo vengo, de Sudamérica, donde el inglés no es algo que la gente lo sepa, no es algo que se haya enseñado hace muchos años en las escuelas, e incluso hoy en día es cosas que no se enseñan, a veces en algunas escuelas y lugares, o quizás de muy mala manera. Entonces yo sé que para gente quizás en países más desarrollados, como en Europa, por ejemplo, en Norteamérica, el tener inglés es algo como, bueno, es algo que siempre está. Entonces, en esa posición quiero que intentemos ponernos en esta charla. La primera opción, y es un poco una temática, quise comenzar con una temática más avanzada, en caso de que alguna persona acá diga, bueno, a mí no me interesa nada la comunidad que habla en español de Python, me interesa solamente Python porque soy muy experto. Bueno, esta es la parte avanzada de la charla. Sería llevar a cabo lo que sería una internalización extrema de Python. Python, como lenguaje, tiene que en algún lugar dentro de su código fuente entender el inglés que nosotros utilizamos para comunicar. Es decir, cuando hacemos import, hacemos for, while, todas esas palabras tienen que estar en algún lugar. No quiero entrar en detalles sobre cómo funciona todo ese proceso, pero solamente les puedo decir que eso es gracias a la gramática. Entonces vamos a hacer un pequeño ejemplo. En el caso de la gramática, me interesa que ustedes aprendan de que while en español es mientras. Y vamos a cambiar Python. Vamos a cambiar el código fuente de Python para que esta equivalencia exista. Si ustedes miran el código fuente de CPython, hay un archivo que se llama python.gram dentro del directorio grammar, donde yo acá, si se miran acá la línea abajo, agregué esta nueva línea que no agrega nada más fuera de lo común. Si se da cuenta, copia lo que está arriba en while. Y esta es la gramática del while en Python. Entonces usted puede ver este tipo de texto, que si yo quiero transformarlo, como ya habíamos seleccionado acá, que en vez de whiles stmt, tiene que ser mientras stmt. Bueno, traducimos eso y un par de strings dentro del contenido. También ahí hay una referencia a invalid while statement. La misma manera, tomamos la versión en inglés, lo cambiamos a la versión en castellano, cambiando un par de cosas. Entonces hicimos todos estos pequeños cambios en la gramática. Entonces, ¿qué pasa? ¿Cómo tenemos que hacer todo esto que funciona? Bueno, primero que todo asumo de que ustedes van a tener CPython clonado en su ordenador. Luego, entramos y hacemos una configuración bastante simple. Este proceso tiene muchas opciones, pero vamos a hacerlo simple. Luego tenemos que regenerar un par de archivos que ya están agregados en el repositorio por estos cambios de gramática que hicimos. Y luego compilamos y ejecutamos Python. Y si se dan cuenta ya hay un intérprete totalmente normal, general que está compilado, por ejemplo, hoy 20 de noviembre. ¿Cómo se ve esto? Bueno, ustedes pueden ver acá, este es el directorio donde tengo la configuración, tengo mi binario de Python y voy a escribir una sentencia para que ustedes me crean de que esto es Python, totalmente sencilla, con todo lo que tiene que ver con while y también por otro lado con la palabra mientras que acabamos de agregar. Exactamente el mismo funcionamiento, si se dan cuenta, no les mentí y esa es la... ¿Se puede cambiar todo? Sí, se puede cambiar todo. Como no es el tema de esta charla, les invito a ver, hay 2 charlas relámpago muy cortitas, 5 minutos. La primera es la PyCon US con respecto a unos cambios que hice un poco más avanzados de lo que es Python, lo que es español en Python. Y en el segundo hice un experimento bastante interesante de que agregué varias palabras a la gramática de Python para entender y programar en eslovaco. ¿Por qué no es una buena opción esto? Bueno, primero que todo porque el nivel de mantención que tiene que tener un proyecto como este es gigantesco. O sea, ustedes ya lo vieron que hay que hacer todos esos cambios para una palabra. Imagínense todo el montón de test, documentación, errores y todo por el estilo. Puede existir conflicto de palabras. Hay palabras, por ejemplo, keywords en Python, como in, para saber si algo está en algún lugar. En español es en, o el statement with, en español es con. En muchos lugares de Python se pueden quizás crear variables con estos nombres y se va a existir un conflicto y habría que adaptar totalmente los tests y un montón de otras cosas. También los errores de los mensajes, que hay otro lenguaje de programación que decide mirar si tu sistema está, por ejemplo, en alemán, todos los errores son en alemán. Esto también puede ayudar a que la gente entienda, pero ¿qué pasa? Porque es una mala idea también traducir los errores de mensaje, porque luego cuando yo no sepa y veo el error de mensaje, lo copio, lo pongo en un buscador, los resultados van a ser limitados si es que los comparamos con la versión original que está en inglés. Tampoco es una buena idea. Mezclar el código también sería posible, pero tampoco tendría sentido y tendríamos un código que no se entendería para nada, mezclando cosas en español y inglés. Y por otro lado, lo que ya les comentaba es la configuración regional del ordenador actualmente, que pueda cambiar un par de cosas y alterar el funcionamiento del proyecto. Opción B, la documentación. Entonces, ¿qué pueden hacer ustedes para ayudar? Parece sencillo, pero no lo es. O sea, es escribir un blog post, por ejemplo, de un tema que a ustedes les guste. Extender los tutoriales y los ejemplos de algún proyecto, o quizás también su propio sitio web, también asociado a lo que es un blog post. Quizás modificar las guías para comenzar en algún proyecto. Vemos en diferentes proyectos de que hay README en diferentes idiomas. Quizás ustedes también puedan ayudar a que la gente entienda eso. Y algo un poquito más avanzado que sería la documentación de la API de cierto módulo o lenguaje. Entonces, ¿cómo comenzamos esto? Primero que todo, no hay que sobrepensar de cuál va a ser el mejor tema más adecuado que nunca nadie ha escrito, ni un material, ni nada por el estilo. No piensen en eso. Láncense directamente y intenten escribir sobre algo que estén haciendo en su día a día o que tengan un poquito más de conocimiento. Por ejemplo, compartan cualquier cosa que hayan descubierto. Si bien es cierto, lo que ustedes descubrieron, alguien más lo sabía o mucha gente más lo sabía, no por eso todo el mundo lo va a saber. Entonces es muy conveniente que si ustedes descubren una pequeña cosa que todo el mundo sabe, no se preocupen lo que piensen los demás, compartan eso en su lenguaje y así pueden tener que la gente pueda entender y eso. También sobre cosas que nosotros vamos aprendiendo. A mí me gusta mucho cuando veo de repente plataformas de gente que dice, hoy aprendí sobre cómo utilizar las listas en Python. Uno podría decir, pero todo el mundo sabe usar las listas. No, hay mucha gente que está aprendiendo a programar y no sabe cómo funcionan las listas en Python. Entonces, no se preocupen en cosas. Siempre van a haber otras personas que sepan lo que ustedes están aprendiendo y descubriendo, pero eso da igual, porque también de la misma forma hay gente que aún no llega a ese nivel y ustedes les van a estar ayudando. Y sobre todo usa la plataforma que más te guste, no hay necesariamente hacer una cuenta en alguna plataforma A o B o C, Da igual eso. Lo importante es utilizar algo que nos dé comodidad y que podamos explicar cualquier idea. Otra idea de cómo comenzar son los sprints, que son eventos que están relacionados a hacer un trabajo en corto tiempo, a veces son un par de días, pero en un equipo donde hay gente que también te ayuda a hacerlo. Entonces pueden buscar sprints asociados a algún proyecto, por ejemplo, con los proyectos de PyData, que son muy populares de todo lo que es NumFocus, como NumPy, Pandas, Scikit-learn y muchos otros. Pueden mirar conferencias, muchas veces hay días de sprints dentro de conferencias. Y también organizaciones como, que se enfocan principalmente en hacer sprints, como por ejemplo Mentor Sprints o también Data Umbrella con cosas más relacionadas de datos. Y la última opción de cómo comenzar es acercarte a tu proyecto favorito. Ofrece tu ayuda. Motiva a otra gente que también se una a hacer las cosas de traducciones, por ejemplo, o escribir en tu lenguaje sobre este tipo de proyecto. Y empieza, como ya les comentaba, a solamente hablar de este nuevo proyecto que tanto te gusta con otras personas para que otras personas en tu idioma puedan entender un poco más y obtener también tu punto de vista. Entonces hay un caso bastante especial, que es el caso de la documentación, de la traducción de la documentación de Python al español. Primero que todo, algo bastante interesante que tiene este lenguaje, el español, es de que existen muchos países donde se habla este lenguaje. Si pueden ver ahí, están todas las banderas de los países y en cada uno de ellos existen variaciones de muchas cosas. Entonces, ese ya es un fenómeno bastante interesante. Cuando estamos trabajando juntos en ese proyecto, nos dimos cuenta de que al tener diferentes culturas en un equipo, tenemos muchas más ideas. También podemos aprender un montón sobre el significado de las palabras. Muchas veces ocurre de que una palabra yo la uso de una forma coloquial, puede ser una mala palabra en otro país o otra palabra que no tiene sentido en otro país. Entonces eso nos ayuda un poco a neutralizar un poco la forma que nos comunicamos para que más personas puedan entenderla. Y una cosa muy interesante también es la realidad de diferentes personas en diferentes países. Yo actualmente donde vivo sé de que mucha gente, un número muy elevado, va a entender inglés, por ejemplo. Pero muchas personas de otros países nos decían de que en su ciudad, por ejemplo, no servía mucho el material en inglés porque existían muchas personas que aún ni siquiera dominaban mucho el inglés. Nosotros tenemos que también saber que hay muchas culturas en Sudamérica que a veces que no hablan tanto español porque son culturas ya aborígenes, por ejemplo, pre-colombinas en ese sentido, y existe también otro lenguaje ahí. Entonces no tenemos que asumir esas cosas. Entonces con todas estas ideas que ya les acabo de mencionar, está lo que son las semillas de comunidad, que le llamo yo. En este caso se formó esta semilla muy interesante. Esta semilla dio a luz una comunidad muy grande de personas. Ustedes pueden ver ahí una foto con todos los nombres de todas las personas que colaboraron para hacer la traducción de Python 3.10. Hoy en día tenemos muchas personas más participando porque está la versión 3.11 de Python. Y todo eso, el trabajo final es que ustedes pueden ir a esa URL y mirar toda la documentación de Python en español. Si tú, por ejemplo, hablas español y estás mirando esta charla, te puedes unir al equipo. Hay mucha información en ese link de abajo, donde también después luego te puedes unir a un canal de Slack, de Telegram, perdón, para poder unirte al equipo y comenzar a traducir. Entonces, este es el lugar donde todo lo que es comunidad entra a toda esta gran escena de lo que es tener Python en diferentes lenguajes. Algo muy importante. Los requerimientos para ingresar a este tipo de iniciativas son la motivación y nada más. Existió algo muy bonito en este proyecto, de que muchas personas también, aparte de esta contribución que hicieron, comenzaron a aprender otro tipo de tecnologías. Personas que eran nuevas a todo lo que era el desarrollo, por ejemplo, basado en Git. Personas que eran nuevas a lo que era la automatización de procesos con bot, continuous integration y muchas otras cosas más, y también herramientas que ayudan a la traducción de proyectos. Muchas personas también pudieron lanzarse y hacer, no sé, su primera charla o guiar un sprint, hacer mentoring de personas y muchas otras cosas. Entonces, lo que se va aprendiendo acá es mucho más que el trabajo final que ustedes están desarrollando. Entonces, al ir reduciendo la dificultad para que la gente vaya aprendiendo, podemos ir resolviendo y aclarando varias cosas. Lo primero que ya les comenté es de que nunca tenemos que asumir lo que la gente ya sepa, porque hay mucha gente que va a saber mucho menos y mucho más que nosotros. No todos los conceptos son fáciles de entender en inglés, que no es nuestra lengua materna. Por ejemplo, si a usted yo le pregunto ahora cuál es la diferencia entre pickling, marshalling o serializing datos en Python, quizás muchos de ustedes van a decir, no me queda muy claro, voy a ir a leer la documentación y tenemos que leer no tanto la API, sino que tenemos que leer de qué van cada uno de esos procesos. Quizá hay gente nueva, todo lo que es asynchronous computing, que también puede ir ahí y confundirse de qué es lo que está pasando y hay que leer todo el texto. Entonces, leer todo el texto en nuestro idioma hace que obviamente que nos sintamos como en casa, que estamos ya con una barrera menos y estamos leyendo algo que sabemos al menos de que la base la manejamos por completo. Hay algo que es muy interesante también, es el orgullo de la gente de participar en esto. Participar en el caso de la traducción de Python, de la documentación de Python, es contribuciones a Python. Hay mucha gente que piensa de que para contribuir a un lenguaje solamente hay que ser una persona muy inteligente que sepa mucho de programación y arregle unos problemas muy difíciles, pero no es eso, hay muchas formas de contribuir a un proyecto. Entonces, contribuir a la documentación de un proyecto es contribuir a ese proyecto. Como ya les mencionaba, aprender otras tecnologías, sentirse más cómodo, por ejemplo, en grupos de trabajo, en todo lo que es el flujo de trabajo de Git y muchas otras cosas. Por ejemplo, automatización de tareas también es algo muy interesante, la programación de bots que comuniquen cambios y cosas por el estilo. Son tecnologías que la gente puede ir aprendiendo. Y también sentir ese orgullo de ser parte de una iniciativa muy, muy, muy bonita y que yo realmente sé que lo que pasa con la comunidad en español es algo bastante puntual y que no se puede replicar en muchos otros idiomas, pero no pierdo la esperanza de que también otros lenguajes que quizás no se hablan en tantos países, pero que tengan mucha gente o muchos dialectos, se puedan unir para poder llevar a cabo la traducción de proyectos tan grandes como es la documentación de Python. Entonces, el siguiente paso que yo les me gustaría recomendarle es acérquense a sus comunidades locales y piensen en quizás vale la pena comenzar la traducción de algo que nosotros estemos utilizando. Quizás es un módulo, quizás es un lenguaje de programación, quizás puede ser hasta un sitio web que enseñe a hacer algo, un proceso. Entonces, si no hay algún grupo cerca, quizás lo que pueden hacer es crear una, que es un poco más complicado, o quizás mirar algunos en las cercanías, quizás no tan directas, y de que haya iniciativas a las cuales ustedes puedan unirse. Es muy importante esto, si se dan cuenta, si unimos personas con diferentes realidades, estamos haciendo que todos vayamos mejorando, y en este caso, ya que estamos en la Pyjamas, de que Python vaya mejorando. Y así podemos abrir un poquito más los ojos y darnos cuenta de que no es solamente el Python Community, sino que también es la comunidad, Gemeinschaft y en muchos otros idiomas. Porque son palabras que hacen que nos conectemos con nuestras raíces, de que tengamos una identidad centrada en un proyecto y que no estemos totalmente como limitados por el idioma, sino que podamos abrir las puertas de esta comunidad tan bonita a muchas más personas. Desde la comunidad hispanohablante, nosotros lo que hicimos fue crear esta iniciativa que se llama hablemospython.dev, que es una iniciativa de que intenta agrupar a todos los países hispanohablantes, reunir recursos y muchas cosas más. Y yo sé, como les decía, esto es algo especial, pero les motivo a de que puedan hacer comunidades de Python basadas en lenguaje, en idiomas, perdón, y no tanto en países. Creo que es súper interesante de la misma forma, por ejemplo, de que vecinos acá cerca de gente de Portugal y Brasil tienen un idioma en común. Existen muchos otros países donde quizás existen otros lenguajes que no son inglés, que puedan unirse y empujar de forma mucho más grande, mucho más fuerte. Y bueno, ya terminando, como les decía, me pueden encontrar en diferentes redes ahí. Si tienen alguna pregunta o cualquier otro comentario respecto a este tema, o quizás están interesadas en saber cómo cambiar realmente el lenguaje de los keywords de Python, aunque no es una buena idea, pero bueno, para aprender, me pueden enviar un mensaje. Muchas gracias por permitirme participar en esta conferencia y sobre todo muchas gracias por permitirme dar esta charla en español. You're muted.
I'm
Sorry,
muted.
I just enter.
All good. So basically, well, the good thing is about if you speak muted, then you are not understandable in any language. Thank you very much for this talk, and thanks for having that we have a Spanish talk on here as well, and not only English all day.
Exactly.
So, what do you think? Should we really change Python to Spanish?
No, it's a really bad idea. I mean, I know it, but I just wanted to. The whole point was, of course, to make a point, right? I remember when I gave the lighting talk with that in the Python US. I mean, many people were laughing, but they say, "Oh, it's so weird," right? I mean, and sometimes people that speaks English fluently take it for granted, right? So we don't know about the barriers. Sometimes I don't know in your case, but when I started to code, I was already familiar with English, so it was not a problem for me. Like, okay, so English keywords.
Yeah.
Many people it's not bad. Yeah,
no,
there are other ways.
There are many countries where English is not that popular. Before the internet, for like old people, English was a bit of a problem, and I got mine from watching too much TV. But Germany, of course, translates everything into German. So most Germans don't speak, like the older Germans, they don't speak English. And I live here at the border, so we got the TV from Denmark, which has everything in English. So by watching comedy shows, you learned some English. And that turned out to be an extremely good investment in time, if I look back on that now.
Exactly. And this happened in many countries as well. I mean, in Spain, for example, also they dub most of the things, translate almost everything. But because we have, I don't know, maybe in South America we have so much influence from the US, I guess that we were more used to listening to English stuff with the Spanish subtitles. And in a way,
I don't know if other people can still understand you, but here on my side, the sound just went away.
Oh,
but
it's maybe
could have been me.
Too low or something?
Yeah, now it's fine. Maybe, I have no idea. But we have had a day full of fun technical problems, so why not add another one?
Why not? Exactly.
It's surprising, like, for people who have never done online conferences, the things that go wrong. And not just the things like speakers not being able to connect, but just normal stuff like your webcam breaking 1 minute before you're supposed to go on the air, or your microphone stopping to work. This happens quite often, but hey, that's life. Anyway, Christian, that was very a good reminder that the world is not English and that it's worth looking at the other languages as well. And yes, and I see that you're coming back later today.
Yes.
So we're going to switch positions. You're going to be the host for half a block in the evening. So anybody who wants to chat with Christian can do that in the online or in the Discord, and then just looking up on the on the later talks.
Yeah. So there was a little question there. Yeah,
let's check.
from Glenn. He was asking, like, well, maybe I can put it on the screen.
Yes, exactly. The video will be available, and
and in any case, Glenn, maybe I mean, if you are still looking for speakers, I can talk with Jose, that is the organizer of that Boston meetup group, and maybe we can have a similar talk there as well, or maybe we could have the English version. I don't know. And because after all, is the main point is just to plant this seed that I was saying, that we should try to help other languages in general. And in the US there are many languages as well. So
Spanish I think is like the biggest language other than English.
The second way, exactly. And I mean, but I was surprised, for example. We still have a minute, but
we still have a minute to chat. So
in Canada, that of course Mandarin Chinese is also popular. That I remember when I arrived in the airport, everything was in French and English and in Mandarin, and it was like, what? Because I had no idea it was reality. So why not?
Okay, but I think you deserve a little break now, and I'll get ready for the next minute so that we can get to the last talk of this block. So thanks again for taking all the time to record this and for providing the translation as well, because
the terrible subtitles.
that was a really fun project, and I learned a lot about the technical challenges of doing something like this. So that was awesome. Thanks for that. Okay. See you later. And so we are almost, actually we are just a few seconds ahead. So I'm going to invite the next speaker onto the stage already, if you're ready. Let's just wait until, I see the sign. Hello, Marcelo.
Hello, Martin.
Oh, I can see that your microphone works and everything works, so that's great.
Good.
I don't know if you've been with us this morning. We had some fun problems, which you get if you want to do a stream for 24 hours. So I've seen you in there as the Fast API expert, and people who don't know you, you're the maintainer of Starlet and UVCorn. So basically, everything Fast API touches and is fast is your job, right?
I help maintaining those packages, and I've also been helping a lot in the Fast API community for some time now.
I love Fast API, and I'm actually just in the process of converting a SOAP API to Fast API. So I will be really paying attention to what you have to say about performance tips, because that's something that people don't really know much about. So I'm going to put your slides on the screen and hope that you have a good presentation.
Good. Thank you, Martin. Thank you for having me here. Today I'm going to talk about, my name is Marcelo, and today the topic of my talk will be performance tips with the Fast API expert. I'm going to tell you a bit about myself, which Martin just introduced me. I am considered a Fast API expert. I've been helping the community for more than 2 years now, mainly helping issues with the Discord server, also code contributions. And besides that, I am a maintainer of UVCorn and Starlet. UVCorn is a web server which runs applications like Fast API, and also different applications that follow the same interface as Fast API follows, which would be ASCII. And Starlet is a web framework that it's basically the web part of a Fast API. So Fast API inherits the Starlet main class, and it makes use of that. So this talk, it's going to be about performance. It's going to be mainly mentioning things that you can do to improve the performance of your application. It's going to be a bit about server side, about the application side itself. And the thing is that I'm going to compare a base application with several improvements that can be done. A takeaway that you should have, you should get from this talk, it's more about the things that can improve your application more than for how much that improvement, like what's the benefit, how much it is beneficial for your application. I just want to tell you that this is beneficial, not the amount of it. And you're going to see why I'm mentioning this. So here we have a simple Fast API application. It doesn't have, it's not very complex, and all our study here will be done around this application. So the benchmarks that I have performed are also on this application and on the ones that you're going to see soon. But then you need to be aware that this is a very specific endpoint. So it's not a real case scenario. So I'm not performing a load test on several endpoints based on users, and I'm using localhost to do the load testing and the benchmarks, but it's just on this kind of application. So the results might differ on different kinds of applications, and this is the one that you're going to use it. So as we see, this is a Fast API application. On line 6, we are just instantiating the Fast API application. And on line 9, we have the response model, which is a list of output. The output on line 3 and 4 So the line 3 is the data that I've generated for this specific study. And on line 4, we have the Pydantic model that's going to be used to validate our data. Okay, on line 11, this is kind of something that I've seen a lot, which is basically people that try to create the Pydantic model within the body of the endpoint, the endpoint function. We're going to see at some point this is not needed, but I put it here to see how it improves the performance when we remove it. So let's go. Also, yeah, I've generated the JSON, the output of the data from the JSON-generator.com. And to create the Pydantic model, I've used the JSON to Pydantic web page that gets the JSON, and you can convert it to Python code, which is the Pydantic models. As for those numbers that you see on the screen, I've run localhost, and they gave me some numbers. Those are the numbers that I got. You don't need to be focused on those numbers. We're going to see how much things improve, and I'm just going to prove it that it improves. So you just need to be aware that I'm going to repeat those numbers along to this talk. Yeah, the first improvement that you need to do. So some improvements that I'm going to mention, they are kind of maybe obvious if you read some of the documentation of FastAPI or UVcorn or Starlet. But I'm going to mention them at the beginning. So maybe if you are aware that you need to do this, maybe you don't are aware why you need to do it. So on this case, we have UVloop, which is in an event loop implementation that is faster than the one that we have on the standard library of async.io. So to benefit from like using it, we have an improvement of 12% considering the application that we saw at the beginning. It's a good improvement, right? But yeah, just take it as not the number, as I said, but that it actually improves the performance of the application. Also, to have that on your application, you just need to install UVloop. You don't need to change anything on the UVcorn command or in the FastAPI application. You just need to install it. If it's installed, UVcorn is going to infer that, it's going to find it, and it's going to use it. So if you just have it installed, then you're going to benefit from this. Another benefit is using the HTTP tools, which is an HTTP. So we use two packages in UVcorn to make the HTTP implementation. So everything that is related to HTTP is handled by the parsing and stuff. It's done by two packages, either H11 or HTTP tools. By default, the UVcorn uses H11, which is the implementation is a bit slower than the HTTP tools. And HTTP tools itself, it's a Python binding for the Node.js HTTP parser. So Node.js uses this parser that's called LLHTTP, and we use and HTTP tools is a binding for that. With this, we have 10% of improvement, but again, it's just that is an improvement. And to benefit from this, you just need to install the HTTP tools. The same idea as the UVloop. So if you have it on the environment, UVcorn can infer that it's there, can find it, and can use it. And also, there is a way to install those two without having to install them separately. So if you do pip install UVcorn with square brackets and then standard, you're going to find it. You can also find more about this on the documentation of UVcorn. Okay, now start stuff that people are not aware. Let's start with the bigger thread pool, what I called. So if we see this application from line the beginning, the imports, and from line 13 to the end are the same as the one before, but we are just including this startup function, right? And okay, so if you have, like as we have in line 17, we have an endpoint that is not async. So that means that Starlet, from underneath, it's going to use a thread pool. which in NIO it's called the capacity limiter. Well, the capacity limiter actually tells you how many threads can you use, which we are going to change the number of them that we can use. By default, 40 can be used, like 40, 40 can be used. So that's quite limiting, and sometimes you want to use more than that. And that is what is happening here. So on line 9, it might sound a bit confusing, but we are just getting this default capacity limiter that tells you how many threads can you use. And on line 10, we are just changing this number. So we are going to be able to use 1,000 threads here. And that's the only thing that is happening here. As we have more to use, the application also improves a bit the how many requests can I process for the time that I perform the load testing. Yes, you can find more about this on a specific issue on Starlet. It is not documented properly on maybe none of the frameworks that I've mentioned on this talk, but you can also find this on any IO documentation. It's written stuff related to what I just said. You just look for capacity limiter and you're going to find more information about it. Okay, so now let's go to the maybe obvious, but this, if you use async, the application is also going to improve in the benchmark that we are proposing here. So on this is the same application that we saw at the beginning, with the change that on line 10 we are going to put it async. We are not performing any operation that requires async there, but the fact that we are using it makes us not use the threads from the executor. So it's gonna improve a bit the performance anyway. And yeah, as we can see, there was a around 15% of improvement on this kind of application, and it was good, right? Yeah, but yeah, that's it. Another thing that can improve the performance is so as we saw at the beginning, and as I mentioned, maybe most of the people don't do that, but as I've seen it, I put it there, which is the line 11 that is changing. Here we have the output that is being returned, the response, without that generator, that the list comprehension that we had there. So here, as there is no duplication of creation of the Pydantic objects, then we have an improvement of performance, which is a lot. But also at this point, you need to be aware of kind of that this application, if you notice, it's kind of focusing on the validation. What is performing more work is actually the validation. So it's kind of normal that we have a better improvement if you are removing this duplication of validation. Then we can have strategies to also improve other stuff. And on this case, we have using another library for the JSON serialization. So instead of using the standard library, we'd like to use another library. By default, FastAPI uses the JSON response without the OR at the beginning. It's not written on the screen, but it's the one that uses the JSON library from the standard library. Yes, JSON package from, yeah. And this one that we're seeing on the screen on line 2 is importing the OR JSON, the response, that uses the OR JSON package, which is a bit faster. And as you see, it's the same application as the one that were before. Actually, there is on line 11, it's async, and I am also returning the output. But I assure you that the benchmarks were with the previous application that we saw at the beginning, with dev home and also the generator. I think I just changed it at some point. But yeah, so the results are also there's a lot more difference than the others that were presented before. So it is an improvement that you can try. Also, I mean, I've mentioned by now some improvements, and I've also tried to mention that those are very specific to the application that I have in hands. So do not take those numbers again as a rule. Try those on your application, and you can also do the same load testing and see how good how much they improve the performance of what you have. Another thing that I do not recommend it's not using the validation from Fast API. So as you see on line 8, we have the app .get there, and we don't have a response model, right? If you don't have a response model, you cannot validate the output of the data, which means that you're not gonna lose time with that. And then you get a bit more performance, and you're gonna see that it's a lot better. But also you need to be aware that this is kind of this is a feature of Fast API. Data validation is one of the features that is mentioned, and you are not going to be using the 100%. You are not going to be extracting 100% of the framework if you don't use this feature. But if you have some kind of endpoint that you need it, like you have the whole application and you need one endpoint to have better performance than the others, and you are sure that your data is being sure it's kind of complicated. But yeah, so this can improve the performance of your, at least of the endpoint of interest. And the numbers are a bit high because mainly, as I said, what this endpoint is doing is mainly doing creating the Pydantic object. So it's kind of normal that we are like most of the work is this. So it's kind of normal that we see this huge improvement. Yeah. Okay. So another thing that you can do to improve the performance of your application that I don't recommend is to remove the access logging. So if you remove the access logs using this command, the application name, the application path, and then the application variable name, and use no access log, you are not able to see the HTTP logs anymore, and then your application also improves a bit. And yeah, so let's go to some bonuses. So the first one that I want to talk, it's about the middlewares, how you create middlewares in Fast API and Starlet, which is using a decorator, and then you create the middleware. The thing is that normally the way that is in the documentation of Fast API, it's in a way that is not the most performant way, but it is easier to do it with that. The thing is that there are two ways of doing this. One way is using this base HTTP middleware, which is doing the decorator. Those are analogous here, and using a pure ASCII middleware. A pure ASCII middleware is creating kind of an ASCII application that you can use in blocks with other applications, and they work as a middleware. We're gonna see it right now, but I'm sorry if that's kind of a bit complex, but I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna provide you ways to get a bit more knowledge about this subject. So here we have the Fast API application. So on line 7, we have app.middleware HTTP, which means that we are going to create a middleware that works on HTTP kind of events. There are 3 kind of events. One would be HTTP, the other WebSockets, and the other lifespan. Lifespan are the ones that are for a startup and shutdown events. So yeah, on line 8 we have just the signature with the request and call next as parameters. The request is the request that's arriving, and the call next is a way to it's a callable to call what comes next. And what comes next here would be either the next middleware that is on the sequence. So can be another middleware, or it can be the endpoint itself. So on line 9, we call, for example, the home endpoint that we were calling before. And on line 9, we receive that response. And on line 10, we add the header x potato with the value being banana. And then we give it back the response to the client. Now, okay, if you haven't seen some kind of this stuff, this is not that complicated. I'm gonna explain a bit. I hope I can make it like this easier than what it looks like. But on line 24th, like the last one, you can see that we are adding this middleware. So this middleware, the add potato header middleware, is, as I said, a way to put it together with the application, like in a block, and it runs kind of after and before, depending on how you create the middleware. It's the same as we saw before, but following the ASCII interface explicitly, I'd say. Because the base HTTP middleware also follows the ASCII, of course, but it makes it easier for the user, so you are not aware that this is actually happening underneath. So this is a pure way of creating a middleware. So on line on line 9, we see scope, receive, and send. This is the signature of how an ASCII application, ASCII middleware looks like. We have the scope that contains the information about the connection. We have the receive and send that are callables to interact with the server. On line 10, we are making sure that we have the HTTP type of connection. So instead of being WebSockets or LiveSpan, we're going to make sure that it's HTTP. So if it's not, we're going to call the next part of the block. So it goes directly to our Fast API application, and it doesn't run the middleware itself. Like it runs until there. On line 13, we're defining another send with another send method that we're going to use it to wrap the send method to interact with the server. So on line 14, we are just checking if the message is an HTTP response start. You can read more about what kind of messages are available on the ASCII-ref documentation. But there, we're just making sure that this is the message that we want. And on this message, we have the headers. So on line 15 and 16, I'm adding the X potato header with the value banana. And then on line 20, I'm just using that to run the application. That's it. I hope it was not that complicated, but again, as we saw in the comments here, this is a comment from a GitHub issue on Starlet that this reporter is saying that improved on, at least on the application that they run, that it was twice faster on their machine. So this is something that you can also try and see how it improves the performance of your application. If you think this is too complex to understand, and I maybe spoke stuff that doesn't make much sense now, you can also read more about it on the Starlet documentation. You just search for ASCII pure middleware on the Starlet middleware page, and then you can find it. Florimond, one of the maintainers of Starlet Grid, did a great job there writing it down. And the last tip that I'm going to give, that he didn't make much sense here, because it really depends on the kind of application that you have. It's compressing the responses before sending back to the client. So one way to do this is using, for example, the gzip middleware. And here, I didn't put the benchmarks here of how it performs, because on my specific application, it didn't have any improvement. So I would just not put it here. So, but please try it on yours. It will likely make a difference. It's just that my specific case didn't have it, so I didn't put the benchmarks here. But please try it out. And that's it. Thank you very much. You can follow me on Twitter if you want to, and I am Clodex on GitHub and Marcelo Trelesinski at LinkedIn. Thank you. I cannot hear. Hold on.
No,
Ah,
my
okay,
microphone
that's
is
why.
open. Yeah,
You cannot see me. Hold
I
on.
cannot see. It's getting quite dark. Yeah.
Oh,
But no, that was an impressive list of tips, especially at the beginning, that you just have to install a few things and then suddenly Fast API will get faster. You mentioned it quickly that you're using Locust to test the speed. Is that correct? Was
Yes.
that for the examples?
Yes.
Okay, or can you also recommend other tools that you could use to test the speed?
WRT, people use it a lot.
Okay.
Kind of load test and benchmark to the results. There are some new tools that I've tried, but I don't recall the names.
Okay,
but I mainly use Locust. So
yeah, so that's your vote goes to that tool if you want to check the performance of your Fast API.
yes.
Okay, good. Since we still have a little bit of time, like if anybody else has a question, you can always ask questions. So that's totally an option if you're not totally stumped by what you've seen. You also showed the middleware. This middleware is coming before the Pydantic validation, right? So that's a question, by the way.
At the point that I show you, so at the point that I show you is actually after.
Okay.
Because you can so you have the kind of the Fast API, the endpoint in the middle. So you have the middleware that's kind of wrapping it. So it runs something, but I didn't perform anything before the application. I just add the headers after. So you have this map that performs, and then yeah.
So is there also a way to perform something before the validation happens?
But then you do it on the endpoint function, no?
Yeah, basically, the question is, like, if you have Fast API endpoints and you give them to people who are very unflexible, and they will send you in broken JSON, and they are a government agency, so they don't care. So I had this, like, when working with Moroccan authorities. And so it's also interesting to see, like, where can you have like a middleware that allows you to fix things before they go into Fast API.
I mean, I think if I got it right, what I would do was actually not to. I would not allow Fast API to perform the validation. I would perform it myself. So if you get, I show you OR JSON response.
Yes.
But if you get, I mean, if you can use that, if you explicitly return that, if you do return or JSON response with the data inside, then Fast API is not going to use the validation. So you can actually validate yourself in that specific case.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't want to carry on this special case for too long. It's just to say, okay, you say it's possible, and then that's that's. Yeah, I was always worried about, like, is Pydantic taking up too much of the time, because it does do a lot of things.
Yeah, but I mean, again, the endpoint that I tried here was specific. Like the more of the work was basically validating the data. So it's kind of normal that when I removed the validation, we saw a big improvement there. A real endpoint like would not have only that; would have database calls and other stuff.
Yeah, there would also be more calls. That's correct. So probably it doesn't really matter that much. And the gzip thing, of course, normally you would have something in front of your Fast API, like maybe an Nginx or another web server, so that wouldn't do the compression then before something goes out. So is that did you consider that when you did that test, so that it could be somewhere on the way, or?
Well, on my study, I only used those three tools. Like I have Fast API, Unicorn, and the packages that are around, and then I didn't use any other layer. So
okay. Yeah, well, let's see if we have any other questions in there. But it was really good to think about this and to think about how you can speed up your Fast API in production. Of course. and of course, most people like for example, I also like the documentation part of Fast API a lot. It's like one of the reasons why I think it's the obvious choice to do APIs. But of course, you have to trust it in the long run if you want to put a lot. Yes, if you want to put a lot of loads on it. So, well, thanks for taking the time to show all this to us, and I hope to meet you again at some other conference soon.
Cool. Yeah.
Bye.
So, thank you.
Okay, and that closes the second block we have. So you have now a chance for a 1 hour break where you can have some tea and biscuits or whatever you like to enjoy at this time in your word. Just let me check the last comment. There was another thank you. Yeah, there were loads of thank yous. And that is something I would also agree with. It was really interesting. Anyway, so we have 1 hour left where you can have a tea break, and then we'll hopefully have our host from the US, Jason, for the next block, and we'll have we'll start with a talk on building custom data applications. We'll have Python decorators later. We'll have beating, Tim-sorted merging, and many more things. So I hope you're going to stick around after the break. And for those of you who have the fixed YouTube link, there's a reminder that after closing this stream, you will have to switch over to part 3. For most people, it should automatically start playing the next part as soon as we close this. But if we close this and suddenly nothing happens with you, then please manually check that you are on the correct part. Okay, that's all I have at this moment. So I hope you're going to come back in an hour and enjoy more of Pyjamas. See you then. Oops, that one shouldn't have gone away, so let's try this again. And let's try this again. There we go.
Bye.